Sometimes the most invisible people around us hold the greatest strength. The man you pass in the hallway every single day might be the hero you never knew existed. Karel Novak has worked as a janitor in the small town of Oak Ridge for 15 years now. Every day, he mops floors, fixes broken things, and takes care of the heating system. He is a quiet man with gentle hands. He raises his 9-year-old daughter, Anichka, alone. When the principal asks Karel to guard the stage during the big school performance, nobody expects anything special. It is just another job for the man who keeps the school running. But then something unexpected happens. Karel must show courage that nobody knew he had. Can one tired father save the entire evening? What happens when an ordinary person must become a hero? The alarm clock rang at 5:30 in the morning, just like it did every single day for the past 5 years. Karel Novak reached over and turned it off before the sound could wake Anichka in the next room. The small apartment above the bakery on Main Street was quiet except for the gentle hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. Karel sat on the edge of his bed for a moment, rubbing his eyes and feeling the weight of another day settling onto his shoulders. His back ached from yesterday's work, when he had to move all the heavy boxes from the storage room to make space for the Christmas decorations. He was 42 years old, but felt much older some mornings. The wooden floor was cold under his bare feet as he stood up and walked to the tiny bathroom. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a tired man with dark circles under his eyes and grey hair starting to show at his temples. This was not how he imagined his life would turn out when he was young and full of dreams. But life had a way of changing plans, and Karel had learned to accept what came his way. He splashed cold water on his face and got dressed in his blue work uniform, the same one he wore every day. The shirt had his name stitched on the pocket in faded red letters. He walked quietly to the kitchen and started making coffee, the rich smell filling the small space and bringing a tiny bit of comfort to the early morning. While the coffee brewed, Karel prepared Anichka's lunch for school. A sandwich with cheese and ham, an apple cut into slices, a small container of carrot sticks, and 3 cookies that he baked together with her last Sunday. He wrapped everything carefully and placed it in her pink backpack, the one with her name embroidered on the front in purple thread. That backpack was a gift from Marie, Anichka's mother, given to her just 2 weeks before she passed away. Karel touched the embroidered letters gently, remembering his wife's careful stitches and the love she put into every detail. Marie had been an elementary school teacher, warm and kind, with a smile that could light up any room. They met when Karel was 25, working as a maintenance helper at the very same school where she taught 2nd grade. She saw something in him that nobody else did, something beyond the blue uniform and the mop in his hands. She saw his gentle heart, his quiet strength, and his dream of being more than what circumstances had made him. They fell in love slowly, over shared lunches in the teacher's lounge and long walks through the park after school. They married 2 years later in a small ceremony with just their closest friends and family. Anichka came into their lives 3 years after that, a beautiful baby girl with Marie's bright eyes and Karel's gentle disposition. Those were the happiest years of Karel's life. He had his wife, his daughter, and a job that paid enough to support them. He was not rich, but he was content. Then everything changed when Anichka was 4 years old. Marie started feeling tired all the time, losing weight without trying, and having pains that would not go away. The doctors ran tests and gave them news that shattered their world. Cancer, aggressive and already spread too far. They tried everything, every treatment the doctors suggested, but nothing worked. Marie fought hard for over a year, determined to see Anichka grow up, but her body could not win the battle. She died on a cold November morning, leaving Karl alone with a 5-year-old daughter and a heart so broken he did not know how he would survive. But he did survive, because Anichka needed him. He got up every morning, made breakfast, took her to school, went to work, picked her up, made dinner, helped with homework, and tucked her into bed. Day after day, month after month, year after year. It was hard at first, so hard that some nights he cried quietly in the bathroom after Anichka fell asleep. But slowly, very slowly, it got a little easier. Not the missing Marie part, that never got easier, but the daily routine of being both mother and father to a little girl who needed him more than anyone had ever needed him before. Now Anichka was 9 years old, smart and kind and full of life. She looked so much like Marie that sometimes it took Karl's breath away. She had the same bright eyes, the same warm smile, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking about something. She loved to dance and dreamed of becoming a ballerina one day. Every night before bed, she practiced her positions in the living room, while Karl watched from the couch, clapping and encouraging her even when his body was exhausted from work. The coffee finished brewing, and Karl poured himself a cup, adding just a little bit of milk the way he liked it. He sat at the small kitchen table and looked out the window at the dark street below. The bakery lights were already on downstairs, and he could see old Mr. Svoboda moving around, preparing the morning's bread. The smell of fresh baking drifted up through the floorboards, mixing with the coffee smell and creating a comfort that made this tiny apartment feel like home. At 6:15, Karl walked to Anichka's room and gently opened the door. She was still asleep, her dark hair spread across the pillow and her small chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. Her room was small but filled with things she loved. Drawings she made covered one wall, a bookshelf held her favorite stories, and her ballet shoes hung on a hook near the closet. Karl sat on the edge of her bed and softly touched her shoulder. "Wake up, my little dancer," he said quietly. "Time for school." Anichka stirred and opened her eyes, smiling when she saw her father. "Good morning, Tatinek," she said, using the Czech word for daddy that Marie had taught her. They kept some of the old words alive in their home, a small connection to Karl's heritage and to Marie's love of language. "Good morning, sweetheart," Karl replied. "I made your lunch already. We have scrambled eggs for breakfast." Anichka sat up and stretched, then climbed out of bed. She was wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones with stars on them. "Can I practice my dance after school today?" she asked. "Of course," Karl said. "But first you need to get ready for school and eat a good breakfast." By 7 o'clock, they were both ready. Anichka wore her school uniform, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail that Karl had learned to make through years of practice. They walked down the stairs together, Karl carrying both their bags, and stepped out onto the cold morning street. The December air was crisp, and their breath made pall clouds in front of their faces. The school was only 6 blocks away, and they walked there together every morning, holding hands and talking about whatever was on Anichka's mind. Today she talked about the big Christmas performance that was coming up in a few weeks. All the students were excited about it. It was the biggest event of the school year, a tradition that had been going on for more than 30 years. Every grade performed something different, songs or dances or short plays, and parents filled the auditorium to watch their children on stage. Anichka had auditioned for a small role in the 5th grade play and got the part. She was so proud and had been practicing her lines every night. "I hope I do not forget my words, Tatinek," she said, squeezing his hand a little tighter. "You will do wonderful," Karol assured her. "You have been practicing so hard. I will be there watching you, and I will be so proud no matter what happens." When they reached the school, Karol walked Anichka to her classroom, kissed her forehead, and watched her join her friends. Then he made his way down to the basement where the maintenance office was located. This was his domain, a small room filled with tools, cleaning supplies, spare parts, and everything needed to keep an old school building running. The walls were covered with schedules, diagrams of the heating system, and notes about repairs that needed to be done. His old friend Joseph was already there, sitting at the desk and drinking coffee from a chipped mug. Joseph was 70 years old and had worked at the school for 45 years before retiring 3 years ago. But he still came in a few times a week to help out and to have someone to talk to. He had taught Karol everything he knew about maintaining a building, about fixing things that broke, about the pride in doing good work, even when nobody noticed. "Good morning, young man," Joseph said with a smile. His voice was rough from years of smoking, but his eyes were still sharp and kind. "Morning, Joseph," Karol replied, hanging his coat on the hook by the door. "How are you feeling today?" "Old," Joseph laughed, "but still alive, so I cannot complain." "Big day today, yes. The principal wants to talk to you about something." Karol felt a small flutter of worry in his chest. He never liked being called to the principal's office, even though Mrs. Svoboda was always kind to him. "What about?" he asked. Joseph shrugged. She did not say. "But do not worry, I do not think you are in trouble. Probably something about the Christmas performance. They need extra help with all the preparations." Karol nodded and finished his coffee. He spent the next hour doing his morning rounds, checking the classrooms, making sure the heating was working properly, and cleaning up small messes that students always seemed to leave behind. At 9 o'clock, he made his way to the principal's office on the 2nd floor. Mrs. Svoboda was a woman in her mid-50s, with grey hair pulled back in a bun and glasses that sat on the end of her nose. She had been principal for 12 years and ran the school with a firm but fair hand. Everyone respected her, including Karol. "Come in, Karol," she called when he knocked on her open door. "Sit down, please." Karol sat in one of the chairs across from her desk, his hands folded in his lap. Mrs. Svoboda smiled at him warmly. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know you are busy with your work, so I will not take too much of your time. I wanted to talk to you about the Christmas performance. As you know, it is our biggest event of the year, and this year we are expecting even more people than usual. We have students from every grade participating, and we have sold almost 300 tickets already." Karol nodded, listening carefully. "The thing is," Mrs. Svoboda continued, "our regular security guard, Mr. Dvorak, has had some health problems. He needs to have surgery on his knee and will be out of work for at least 6 weeks. That means he will not be here for the performance. We need someone responsible to watch over the stage area during rehearsals and during the actual show. Someone who knows the building, who can handle any problems that might come up, and who the children and teachers trust." Karol felt his heart beat a little faster. He had a feeling he knew where this conversation was going. "I would like to ask you to take on this responsibility," Mrs. Svoboda said, looking at him directly. I know it is not your usual job, but I cannot think of anyone better suited for it. You are here every day. You know every inch of this building, and you care about our students. I have seen how you interact with them, how gentle and patient you are. Would you be willing to do this for us?" Karl was silent for a moment, his mind racing. He had never done anything like this before. He cleaned and fixed things. That was what he knew how to do. Watching over the stage, making sure everything ran smoothly during such an important event, that felt like too much responsibility. What if something went wrong? What if he made a mistake? But then he thought about Anichka, how excited she was about the performance, how much it meant to all the children. He thought about Marie and how she had always believed he could do more than he thought he could. He looked at Mrs. Svoboda's kind face and saw trust there, trust that he could handle this. "Yes," he said quietly. "I will do it." Mrs. Svoboda's face lit up with a smile. "Thank you, Karl," she said. "I truly appreciate this. Mrs. Markova, our drama teacher, will fill you in on all the details. Rehearsals start next week, and the performance is 3 weeks from now. If you have any questions or concerns, please come talk to me." Karl stood up and shook her hand, then left the office. As he walked back down the hallway, he felt a strange mixture of nervousness and something else he could not quite name. Maybe it was purpose. Maybe it was the feeling that he was being asked to do something that mattered, something beyond mopping floors and fixing leaky faucets. That evening, after dinner, Karl told Anichka about his new responsibility. They were sitting together on the couch, and she was practicing her lines for the play. When he explained that he would be watching over the stage during her performance, her face broke into the biggest smile. "Really, Tatinek," she exclaimed, "you will be right there watching everything. That makes me so happy. I will not be nervous at all if you are there." Karl hugged her close, feeling her small body warm against his. "I will be there," he promised, "and I will make sure everything goes perfectly for you and all the other children." As Anichka continued practicing her lines, Karl sat back and thought about the weeks ahead. He did not know it yet, but this simple request from Mrs. Svoboda was about to change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Sometimes the smallest decisions open the biggest doors, and sometimes ordinary people are called to do extraordinary things. 3 weeks before the Christmas performance, the school transformed into a place of controlled chaos. Teachers rushed through hallways with props and costumes. Students practiced their lines during lunch breaks, and the sound of music drifted from the auditorium at all hours of the day. Karl found himself in the middle of it all, watching and learning and trying to understand what his new role truly meant. Mrs. Markova called a meeting on Monday morning in the auditorium. She was a woman in her early 40s with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. She had been the drama teacher for 8 years and took her work very seriously. Some teachers found her difficult to work with, but nobody could deny that her productions were always impressive. Karl arrived early and sat in one of the back rows, feeling out of place among the teachers and parent volunteers who filled the seats around him. Mrs. Markova stood on the stage, a clipboard in her hands and a look of intense concentration on her face. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice carrying easily through the large space. "As you know, this year's Christmas performance is our most ambitious yet. We have 7 different acts, over 100 children participating, complex lighting and sound requirements, and we are expecting our largest audience ever. This means we cannot afford any mistakes. she went on to explain the schedule. Rehearsals would take place every afternoon for the next 3 weeks. The first week would be for individual acts to practice separately. The second week would be for combining acts and working on transitions. The third week would be full run-throughs with all technical elements in place. The performance itself would be on the evening of December 20th, just a few days before the Christmas holiday began. Karol listened carefully, taking mental notes. Mrs. Markov then turned her attention to him. "Mr. Novak," she said, and Karol felt everyone's eyes shift to him. "You will be responsible for stage security and safety. That means you need to know this stage better than you know your own home. You need to watch for any potential hazards. Make sure no unauthorized people enter the backstage area and be ready to handle any emergency that might arise. Do you understand?" "Yes," Karol said, his voice sounding smaller than he intended. "Good," Mrs. Markova said, already moving on to the next topic. After the meeting ended, Karol made his way down to the stage. The auditorium was old, built back in 1965 when the school first opened. The stage was large, with heavy red curtains that could be pulled across to hide the backstage area. Above, a system of lights hung from metal rafters, controlled by a lighting board in a small booth at the back of the auditorium. The floor of the stage was wooden, worn smooth by decades of performances. Karol walked slowly across it, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. He examined everything carefully. The curtains were operated by a pulley system on the right side of the stage. The backdrop could be changed using a rolling mechanism. There were stairs leading down from both sides of the stage to the floor level. The backstage area was narrow but functional, with rooms for costume changes and prop storage. As Karol explored, he noticed things that concerned him. Some of the floorboards were loose. One of the stage lights flickered. The curtain pulley system made a grinding noise that suggested it needed maintenance. The electrical panel backstage looked old and potentially overloaded. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and began making a list of things that needed attention. A voice startled him from his thoughts. "It is a lot to take in, is it not?" Karol turned to see a young man in his late 20s walking toward him. He was tall and thin, with messy brown hair, and wore a T-shirt with some kind of band logo on it. "I am Pavel," the man said, extending his hand. "I am the technical coordinator. I handle lights, sound, all the backstage mechanics. Mrs. Markova probably forgot to introduce us." Karol shook his hand. "Karol Novak. I am the janitor." "I know who you are," Pavel said with a friendly smile. "I have seen you around. Look, I know this is probably overwhelming, but do not worry too much. I have been doing this for 3 years now. The equipment is old, but it works. Just keep an eye on the kids. Make sure nobody goes where they should not go. And if anything technical breaks, call me immediately." Pavel gave Karol his phone number and showed him around the technical aspects of the stage. He explained how the lighting system worked, how to operate the curtains in an emergency, where all the electrical shutoffs were located, and what to do if the sound system failed. Karol absorbed it all like a sponge, asking questions and making more notes in his little notebook. Over the next few days, Karol spent every spare moment studying the stage. He came early in the morning before his regular work started and stayed late after the school day ended. He read through old manuals he found in the basement, technical documents about the stage construction and the various systems. Joseph sometimes joined him, offering advice from his decades of experience. "You are taking this very seriously," Joseph observed one afternoon as they examined the curtain mechanism together. "It is important," Karl said simply. "The children are counting on everything going right." Joseph nodded approvingly. "That is good. That is the right attitude. You know, I always thought you had more potential than just cleaning floors. Maybe this is your chance to show what you can really do." The thought stayed with Karl as he continued his preparations. He realized that Joseph was right. For 15 years he had been invisible, just the janitor who kept things running in the background. Nobody really saw him, except as the man in the blue uniform with the mop. But now he had a responsibility that mattered, a role where people were counting on him for something important. It felt strange and scary, but also exciting in a way he had not felt in years. The first rehearsal took place on a Tuesday afternoon. Karl arrived at the auditorium 30 minutes early and checked everything one more time. The stage was clean. The lights were working. The curtains operated smoothly after he had oiled the mechanism that morning. He positioned himself at the side of the stage where he could see everything but stay out of the way. Students began arriving, excited and nervous. The younger children from 1st and 2nd grade came first. They were performing a simple song about snowflakes, with choreographed movements that Mrs. Markova had taught them. Karl watched as they took their places on stage, some of them looking tiny in the big space. Mrs. Markova stood in front of the stage, calling out instructions. "Spread out more. Remember to smile. Watch my hands for the tempo." The children did their best, though several forgot their movements, and one little boy started crying because he was scared. Karl felt his heart go out to them. After the younger children finished, it was time for the 3rd and 4th graders. Then came Anichka's group, the 5th graders. Karl felt a surge of pride as he watched his daughter walk onto the stage with her classmates. She saw him standing at the side and gave him a small wave. He waved back, smiling. The 5th grade was performing a short play about a family preparing for Christmas. Anichka had a small role as the youngest daughter. She only had 4 lines, but she had practiced them so many times at home that Karl knew them by heart. As the rehearsal progressed, Karl noticed something concerning. One of the large backdrop pieces, a painted scene of a living room, was not secured properly. It wobbled slightly when anyone walked near it. He made a mental note to fix it as soon as the rehearsal ended. Mrs. Markova ran the rehearsal with military precision, stopping frequently to correct mistakes and give direction. Some of the children looked discouraged by her harsh critiques, but she did not seem to notice or care. She demanded perfection, and anything less was unacceptable in her eyes. After 2 hours, the rehearsal ended, and the children filed out. Karl immediately went to examine the backdrop. As he suspected, 2 of the support braces had come loose. If it had fallen during a performance, it could have hurt someone. He spent the next hour securing it properly, adding extra braces to make sure it would not move. Pavel came by as Karl was finishing. "Good eye," he said. "I did not even notice that was loose." "We have to pay attention to everything," Karl said. "These children's safety is our responsibility." As the days went by, Karl's respect for the magnitude of the production grew. There were so many moving parts, so many things that could go wrong. Costumes had to be changed quickly between acts. Props had to be in the right place at the right time. The lighting had to be perfectly timed. The sound system had to work flawlessly. And through it all, over 100 excited, nervous children had to be kept safe and organized. Karl found himself thinking about the performance constantly, even when he was doing his regular maintenance work. At night, after Anichka went to bed, he lay awake mentally rehearsing everything, imagining, different scenarios, and how he would handle them. He began arriving at the auditorium even earlier, checking and rechecking everything. He made friends with the parent volunteers who were helping with costumes and props. He learned the names of all the children who had major roles. He studied the script and the lighting cues until he knew the entire performance by heart. Elena, his fellow custodian and friend, noticed the change in him. "You are different lately," she said one day, as they ate lunch together in the maintenance room. "More focused, more alive, somehow." Karol thought about it. "Maybe I am," he admitted. "For so long I have just been going through the motions, you know. Getting up, going to work, taking care of Aniczka, going to sleep. The same thing every day. But this feels like something more. Like I am part of something that matters." Elena smiled warmly. "It is good to see. You deserve to feel that way." 1 week before the performance, Mrs. Markova held a special meeting with all the staff involved. There was tension in the air. Some technical problems had emerged during rehearsals. The sound system had cut out twice. Several children had gotten sick and their understudies were not fully prepared. Some parents were complaining about the demanding schedule. Mrs. Markova addressed each concern methodically, but Karol could see the stress on her face. "This has to be perfect," she said firmly. "We have sold 340 tickets. Parents, grandparents, community members are all expecting a professional quality show. We cannot disappoint them." After the meeting, Karol stayed behind to talk to her. Mrs. Markova was gathering her notes, her movements sharp and tense. "Is everything all right?" Karol asked gently. She looked at him, and for a moment her mask of control slipped. He saw exhaustion and worry in her eyes. "I am fine," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It is just a lot of pressure. This performance reflects on the entire school, on my reputation as a teacher. If something goes wrong, it is my responsibility." Karol understood that feeling all too well. "We will make sure nothing goes wrong," he said. "Everyone is working hard. The children are doing wonderfully. It will be a beautiful show." Mrs. Markova's expression softened slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Novak. I appreciate your dedication. You have been more helpful than I expected." That night, as Karol tucked Aniczka into bed, she looked up at him with her big brown eyes. "Tatinek," she said, "I am scared about the performance. What if I forget my lines? What if I mess up in front of everyone?" Karol sat on the edge of her bed and took her small hand in his. "Do you know what I have learned these past few weeks?" he asked. "I have learned that doing something important is always a little scary. But being scared does not mean you cannot do it. It just means you care about doing it well. You have practiced so hard, and you know your lines perfectly. Even if you did forget something, which you will not, I will be right there watching you, and I will be proud of you no matter what happens." Aniczka smiled and hugged him tight. "I love you, Tatinek. I love you too, my little dancer," Karol whispered. "Now get some sleep. You have another rehearsal tomorrow." As Karol closed her bedroom door and walked back to the living room, he felt the weight of his responsibility settling on his shoulders. So many people were counting on this performance going perfectly. The children, the teachers, the parents, Mrs. Markova, Aniczka. He had never been responsible for something this important before, and the thought both terrified and energized him. He did not know it yet, but in exactly 7 days, his ordinary life was about to be tested in ways he could never have anticipated. The stage was set, the players were ready, and fate was preparing to show Karel Novak that sometimes the most ordinary people are called upon to do the most extraordinary things. 2 weeks before the performance, Karel began taking his role more seriously than he had ever taken anything in his life. He arrived at school each morning at 5 o'clock, a full hour before his regular shift started. The building was dark and silent at that hour, filled with the kind of peace that only empty schools possess. Karel would unlock the auditorium door and step inside, breathing in the smell of old wood and dust and possibility. He walked the stage slowly, methodically, checking every inch with a flashlight. He examined the floorboards for any signs of weakness, tested the stability of every piece of scenery, inspected the rigging system that held the lights overhead. His small notebook filled with observations, measurements, and ideas for improvements. Joseph had taught him years ago that good maintenance was not just about fixing things when they broke. It was about preventing them from breaking in the first place. That lesson took on new meaning now. During these quiet morning hours, Karel began teaching himself about theater technology. He found old instruction manuals in the basement storage room, documents that probably had not been looked at in decades. There were diagrams of the stage mechanics, wiring schematics for the lighting system, safety protocols from when the auditorium was first built. Karel studied them all with the intensity of a student preparing for the most important exam of his life. He discovered that the stage had capabilities nobody was using. There was a trap door in the center that could be opened for dramatic entrances and exits. The lighting system had more circuits than Pavel was utilizing. The sound booth had equipment that had never been plugged in. Karel realized that over the years, as staff changed and institutional knowledge was lost, the full potential of this stage had been forgotten. One morning, as Karel was examining the curtain pulley system, he had a memory that surprised him with its clarity. He was 18 years old, fresh out of high school, working as an apprentice for a small theater company in the city. That had been his dream back then. To work in technical theater, to be part of creating the magic that happened on stage. He had been good at it, too. His supervisor had told him he had a natural talent for understanding how things worked, for solving problems creatively. But then his father had gotten sick, and Karel had to come back to Oak Ridge to help support the family. The theater job did not pay enough, so he took work as a maintenance assistant at a factory. The theater dream faded into the background, replaced by the immediate needs of survival. He met Marie a few years later and found a different kind of happiness. He never regretted the choices he made, but standing here now on this stage, he felt something awakening inside him that he thought had died long ago. Pavel arrived one morning while Karel was up on a ladder adjusting one of the stage lights. "What are you doing here so early?" Pavel asked, surprised to see him. Karel climbed down carefully. "I wanted to check this light. It has been flickering during rehearsals. I think the connection is loose." He showed Pavel the problem and his proposed solution. Pavel looked impressed. "You really know your way around this equipment. Where did you learn all this?" "I worked in a theater for a little while," Karel said. "A long time ago. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed it." Over the next few days, Karel and Pavel developed a working friendship. Pavel was young enough to be Karel's son, but he treated the older man with genuine respect. They talked about theater, about lighting design, about the best ways to create different moods and effects on stage. Pavel had formal training from a technical school, but he was impressed by Karel's intuitive understanding of how things worked. "You should have stuck with theater," Pavel said one afternoon as they were programming a new lighting sequence. "You are better at this than some people I went to school with." Karel smiled, but said nothing. What was the point of dwelling on paths not taken? He had Anichka, he had a steady job, he had a life that was simple and safe. That was enough. But a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that maybe it was not enough, that maybe there was still time for something more. The rehearsals continued with increasing intensity. Mrs. Markova pushed the children harder each day, demanding precision and perfection. Some of the younger children started showing signs of stress. A second-grade boy threw up backstage from nervousness. A fourth-grade girl burst into tears when Mrs. Markova criticized her performance. Karl watched it all with growing concern. He understood that Mrs. Markova wanted the show to be excellent, but he worried about the toll it was taking on the children. One afternoon, during a break in rehearsal, Karl saw Anichka sitting alone on the edge of the stage. Her shoulders were slumped, and she looked discouraged. He walked over and sat beside her. "What is wrong, sweetheart?" he asked gently. "I keep making mistakes," Anichka said quietly. "Mrs. Markova told me. I need to speak louder and move more naturally, but when I try to do both things at once, I forget my lines. Then she gets angry." Karl put his arm around her shoulders. "Mrs. Markova is not angry at you personally. She just wants everyone to do their best. You are doing wonderfully. I have watched every rehearsal, and you get better every single time." "But what if I mess up during the real performance?" Anichka asked. "What if everyone laughs at me?" "Then I will stand up in the audience and start applauding for you," Karl said. "And I will keep applauding until everyone else joins in. Because you are my daughter, and I am proud of you no matter what happens. That is what fathers do." Anichka smiled and leaned against him. "I am glad you are here, Tatinek. It makes me feel safe." That conversation stayed with Karl as he continued his preparations. He realized that his job was not just about technical safety and security. It was also about creating an environment where children felt supported and protected. He started paying more attention to the emotional atmosphere during rehearsals. When he saw a child looking upset or discouraged, he found small ways to offer encouragement. A smile, a thumbs up, a quiet word of support. The children began to notice. They started seeking him out during breaks, asking him questions, showing him their costumes, practicing their lines for him. Karl found himself becoming more than just the man who watched the stage. He became someone the children trusted, someone who made them feel like they could succeed. Elena noticed the change when she visited the auditorium one afternoon. She stood at the back and watched Karl interact with a group of third graders who were showing him their dance routine. "Look at you," she said later when they were alone. "You are a natural with them." Karl felt embarrassed. "I am just trying to help." "You are doing more than that," Elena said. "You are giving them confidence." Mrs. Markova is so focused on perfection that she forgets they are just children. They need someone like you to balance that out. 3 days later, something happened that tested Karl's skills for the first time. It was late afternoon, and the 6th grade choir was rehearsing their musical number on stage. There were 30 children arranged in rows, singing a complex harmony arrangement. Suddenly, one of the large spotlights overhead made a sharp popping sound and went dark. Some of the children screamed. Mrs. Markova shouted for everyone to freeze. Karl's mind went into action immediately. He knew that popping sound meant the bulb had blown, possibly because of a power surge. He needed to shut off that circuit before anything else went wrong. "Stay calm," he called out in a voice that was surprisingly steady and authoritative. "Everyone stay exactly where you are. Do not move." He ran to the electrical panel backstage and quickly identified the right circuit breaker. He flipped it off, killing power to that section of lights. Then he grabbed a ladder and climbed up to examine the fixture. The bulb had indeed blown, and he could see scorch marks around the socket. The fixture itself seemed undamaged, but it would need a new bulb, and the wiring should be checked. Mrs. Markov appeared at the bottom of the ladder, her face pale. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. "Should we evacuate?" Carol climbed down and looked at her calmly. "It is fine, just a blown bulb. I have shut off the power to that fixture. We can continue rehearsal with the other lights. I will replace the bulb and check the wiring after the children leave." "Are you certain?" Mrs. Markova asked. "Yes," Carol said. "I am certain." The rehearsal continued, though some of the children were still nervous. Carol stayed visible, making sure they could see he was calm and in control. His presence seemed to reassure them. After everyone left that evening, Carl spent 2 hours examining every light fixture on the stage. He found 3 more that showed signs of electrical stress. He made notes about which ones needed to be replaced immediately and which ones needed monitoring. Pavel joined him and they worked together, replacing bulbs and tightening connections. "That was impressive today," Pavel said. "The way you handled that situation. You kept everyone calm." Carl shrugged. "I just did what needed to be done." "No, really," Pavel insisted. "Most people would have panicked. Mrs. Markova definitely would have panicked. But you knew exactly what to do, and you did it without hesitation." That night, when Carl got home, Anichka threw her arms around him. "Tatinek, you were amazing today," she said. "All the kids are talking about how you saved us when the light exploded." "It did not explode," Karel said, smiling. "It just burned out." "But everyone was scared and you made us feel safe," Anichka said. "You are like a superhero." Karel laughed and ruffled her hair. "I am just your Tatinek. That is the only hero I need to be." But as he lay in bed that night, Karel felt something unfamiliar. It was pride, not just in having handled the situation well, but in having discovered that he was capable of more than he thought. For so many years he had seen himself as just the janitor, just the maintenance man, someone who worked in the background and did not matter much. But today, for a brief moment, he had mattered. He had been the person everyone looked to for help, and he had not let them down. Josef visited the next morning, and Karl told him what had happened. The old man nodded approvingly. "You are finding yourself, Karl. I can see it. This job, this responsibility, it is bringing out something in you that has been sleeping for too long." "Maybe," Karl admitted. "It feels good to be needed for something important." "Just remember," Joseph said, his voice serious. "With responsibility comes risk. What if something goes wrong that you cannot fix? What if you make a mistake?" "Then I will deal with it," Karl said simply. "But I will not make mistakes. I will check everything twice, 3 times, as many times as it takes. I will not let those children down." Joseph smiled. "That is the right answer. That is the answer of a man who understands what is at stake." 10 days before the performance, Karl's transformation was becoming evident to everyone around him. He walked through the school hallways with a different bearing, his shoulders straighter, his steps more purposeful. Teachers who had barely noticed him before now greeted him by name and asked his opinion about stage-related matters. The children waved to him in the corridors and stopped to chat about the upcoming show. Even Mrs. Svoboda, The principal commented on the change when she encountered him checking the fire extinguishers near the auditorium. "Mr. Novak, you seem to be thriving in your new role," she said warmly. "I am hearing wonderful things from Mrs. Markova and the students. I am glad I asked you to take this on." "Thank you," Karol replied. "I am trying my best." "You are doing more than trying," Mrs. Svoboda said. "You are succeeding. Keep up the excellent work." The second week of rehearsals brought new challenges. Now that individual acts had been practiced, it was time to put everything together. This meant complicated transitions between scenes, costume changes that had to happen in less than 2 minutes, coordinating lighting and sound cues, and managing the flow of over 100 children on and off the stage. The first full run-through was chaos. Children missed their entrances, props were in the wrong places, the curtain got stuck halfway, and 2 costume changes took so long that the entire show had to stop and wait. Mrs. Markova was beside herself with frustration. "This is unacceptable," she shouted after stopping the rehearsal for the 5th time. "We have only 9 days left." 9 days. If we cannot get through one complete run without major problems, how can we possibly perform this for an audience? Karol watched from his position at the side of the stage. He could see that the problems were not because the children or volunteers were incompetent. The problems existed because nobody had coordinated all the different elements. The costume team did not know when the lighting changes would happen. The children did not know where to wait for their entrances because backstage was too crowded. The prop handlers were getting in the way of the curtain operators. These were logistical problems, and Karol had spent his entire working life solving logistical problems. During the break, he approached Mrs. Markova. Carefully. "Excuse me," he said. "I might have some ideas about how to improve the transitions." Mrs. Markova looked at him skeptically. "What kind of ideas?" Karol pulled out his notebook, which was now filled with detailed notes and diagrams. "I have been observing the patterns. The main bottleneck is backstage organization. Too many people are trying to move through too small a space at the same time. If we create designated pathways and assign specific waiting areas for each group, the flow will be much smoother." He showed her his diagrams. He had mapped out the entire backstage area and color-coded it by function. Red zones were for costume changes. Blue zones were for children waiting to go on stage. Green zones were for prop storage and handling. Yellow zones were keep clear pathways that must always remain open. Mrs. Markova studied the diagrams carefully. "This is very thorough," she said, and there was surprise in her voice. "You really thought about this?" "Yes," Karol said simply. "I think if we tape these zones on the floor and make sure everyone understands where they should be at each moment, we can cut the transition times significantly." Mrs. Markova considered it, then nodded. "All right, let us try it your way. Show everyone what you have planned." Karol spent the next hour explaining his system to the parent volunteers, the children, and Pavel. He used colored tape to mark out the zones on the backstage floor. He created a simple chart showing which groups should be in which zones at each point in the show. He walked through each transition slowly, making sure everyone understood their positions and responsibilities. Then they ran through the show again. The difference was remarkable. Transitions that had taken 5 minutes now took 2. The backstage area, which had been chaotic, now had a sense of order and flow. Children knew exactly where to go and when. Costume changes happened efficiently. Props appeared at the right moment. By the end of the run-through, even Mrs. Markova was smiling. "That was much better," she announced to the assembled group. "Excellent work, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Novak, for your organizational skills." That evening, as Karol and Anichka walked home together, she talked excitedly about how much smoother the rehearsal had gone. "You made everything better, Tatinek," she said. "Everyone was talking about your color system. They are calling you the stage master." Karol laughed at the nickname. "I just helped organize things a little." "It is not that special." "It is special to us," Anichka insisted. "You made us feel like we can actually do this show without everything going wrong." When they reached their apartment, there was a message on the answering machine. It was from Karol's younger sister, Eva, who lived 3 hours away in the capital city. She had not visited in over a year because she was busy with her own family and career as a lawyer. The message said she had heard about the Christmas performance from their elderly aunt and wanted to know if she could come watch Anichka perform. Karol felt a complicated mix of emotions as he listened to the message. He and Eva had never been particularly close, especially after their parents died. Eva had always been the successful one, the one who went to university and made something of herself. She had never said it directly, but Karol knew she looked down on his life choices, on his simple job and modest circumstances. The thought of her watching him work as a janitor, even in this special role, made him feel self-conscious. He decided not to call her back right away. The next few days were consumed with refining the show. Karol continued his early morning checks, but now he also stayed late into the evening, watching full rehearsals and making notes about anything that could be improved. He became a familiar figure to the parent volunteers, many of whom started asking his advice about their specific areas of responsibility. One mother, Mrs. Horakova, was in charge of costumes. She confided in Karol that she was overwhelmed by the number of quick changes required. Some children had to switch from one costume to another in less than 90 seconds. Karol studied the costume change schedule and realized that some changes could be simplified. Instead of a complete outfit change, maybe just adding or removing a jacket or hat would be enough to indicate a different character. He suggested this to Mrs. Horakova, and together they worked out a revised costume plan that cut change times in half. A father, Mr. Proshaska, was responsible for building the large set pieces. He was worried that some of them were too heavy for the parent volunteers to move quickly during scene changes. Karol examined the set pieces and suggested modifications, adding wheels to the bases and creating a simple rolling system that made them much easier to move. He even stayed after hours one night to help Mr. Proshaska rebuild 2 of the largest pieces. Pavel watched all of this with growing admiration. "You know," he said to Karol one evening as they were closing up the auditorium, "you are basically directing this whole technical side of the show. Mrs. Markova is in charge of the artistic elements, but you are making sure everything actually works in practice." "I am just helping where I can," Karol said. "No," Pavel insisted. "You are doing more than that. You have a gift for seeing how all the pieces fit together. Have you ever thought about doing this professionally?" Karol shook his head. "I am 42 years old, with a daughter to support. I cannot just change careers now." "Why not?" Pavel asked. "My uncle runs a theater company in the city. They are always looking for experienced technical staff. The pay is better than what you make here, and you clearly love this work." For a moment, Karol let himself imagine it. Working in a real theater, doing this every day, instead of mopping floors and fixing toilets. But then reality came crashing back. He had responsibilities, stability, a life that worked even if it was not exciting. He could not risk all that on a dream. "That is kind of you to think of," Karl said. "But my life is here. Anichka's school is here. This is where we belong." Pavel nodded, but looked disappointed. "Well, if you ever change your mind, let me know. I think you are wasting your potential in this job." The words stuck with Karl as he walked home that night. Was he wasting his potential? He had thought he made peace with his life years ago, had accepted that his dreams were not as important as his duties. But this experience with the performance was awakening something in him that refused to go back to sleep. At home, he found Anichka already in bed. She had put herself to sleep, waiting for him. He stood in her doorway, watching her breathe softly, her dark hair spread across the pillow. She looked so much like Marie in that moment that his heart ached. This was why he did what he did. This beautiful child who needed him. His dreams could wait, or they could die completely. It did not matter as long as she was safe and happy. The next day brought a new complication. During rehearsal, one of the 6th grade boys, a child named Tomasz, who had a lead role, suddenly could not remember his lines. He stood on stage with his mouth open, panic in his eyes, as the silence stretched on. Mrs. Markova prompted him, but Tomasz seemed frozen. Finally, he ran off stage in tears. Karl found him sitting in the hallway outside the auditorium, his head in his hands. He sat down beside the boy and said nothing for a moment, just offered his presence. "I cannot do it," Tomasz said finally. "Everyone is going to laugh at me. I'm going to ruin everything." Karl thought carefully before speaking. "Do you know how long I have worked at this school?" he asked. Tomasz shook his head. 15 years, Karl said. "For 15 years I have cleaned these hallways, fixed broken things, done work that nobody notices. Most people do not even know my name. I am just the janitor. But for the last 3 weeks, I have been doing something different. Something that scares me every single day. What if I miss something important? What if the stage is not safe? What if I let everyone down? Do you know what I learned? That being scared is normal when you are doing something that matters." Tomasz looked up at him. "But you always seem so calm." "On the outside, maybe," Karl said. "But inside I am nervous all the time. The difference is that I decided the fear is not as important as doing my job well. You have practiced your lines. You know them. The fear is just trying to trick you into thinking you cannot do what you already know how to do." "But what if I forget again?" Tomasz asked. "Then you pause, take a breath, and someone will help you," Karl said. "Nobody expects perfection. They just want to see you try your best. And I will be right there, watching from the side of the stage. If you need help, look at me, and I will find a way to help you." Tomasz thought about this, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I will try." They went back inside together, and Tomasz successfully completed his scene. Afterwards, Mrs. Markova pulled Karl aside. "What did you say to him?" she asked. "I just reminded him that he is not alone," Karl replied. Mrs. Markova looked at him with an expression that might have been respect. "You have a way with these children. They trust you. I have noticed how much calmer they are when you are present. Thank you for that." It was the first time she had thanked him for anything beyond his technical work. Karl felt a warmth spread through his chest. That night, Karl finally called his sister Eva back. She answered on the third ring, her voice professional and brisk. "Karl, hello. I was wondering if you would call back." "Hello, Eva," he said. "Yes, you are welcome to come to the performance. Anichka would love to see you." "Wonderful," Eva said. "I am bringing my husband and our 2 boys. They are excited to see their cousin perform." "I must say, I was surprised to hear you are involved in the production. What exactly are you doing?" "I am in charge of stage security and safety," Karl said, trying to make it sound more impressive than it felt. "Oh," Eva said, and he could hear the slight dismissal in her tone. "That sounds very responsible. I am sure someone needs to do that." "Yes," Karl said. "Someone does." After they hung up, he sat for a long time in the quiet living room. Eva had not changed. She still saw him as the brother who never amounted to much, who took the easy path, who settled for less. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was just a temporary distraction, and soon he would go back to being invisible again. But a stubborn part of him, the part that was starting to remember the young man who once dreamed of working in theatre, whispered that maybe Eva would be surprised. Maybe they would all be surprised at what Karl Novak could do when given the chance. 1 week before the performance, the school was consumed by anticipation and anxiety in equal measure. The hallways buzzed with nervous energy as children practiced their lines during lunch breaks, and teachers made last-minute adjustments to costumes and props. The auditorium had become the beating heart of the entire school, with rehearsals now running from morning until evening. Karl found himself working longer hours than ever before, but he did not mind. For the first time in 15 years, he felt truly engaged with his work, truly necessary. Each morning, he arrived before dawn to check every element of the stage. Each evening, he stayed until well after dark to watch full rehearsals and address any issues that arose. His little notebook was now completely filled, and he had started a second one. The financial reality of his extra hours began to weigh on him. He was still being paid his regular janitor salary, nothing extra for the additional responsibilities or time. Money was always tight, and the Christmas season made it tighter. Anichka needed new winter boots, the heating bill was due, and he had been hoping to buy her a special present for Christmas. But every time he thought about cutting back his hours, about just doing the minimum required, he remembered the trust in the children's eyes and the responsibility he had accepted. Some things were more important than money. Mrs. Svoboda called him into her office on Monday morning. She looked concerned as he sat down across from her desk. "Karl, I want to thank you again for everything you are doing for this performance," she began. "But I am worried about you. You are working very long hours, and I know we are not compensating you properly for this additional work." "It is fine," Karl said. "I accepted this responsibility, knowing what it would involve. I am not doing it for extra pay." "I know, but still," Mrs. Svoboda said. "After the performance is over, let us sit down and discuss your role here at the school. I have been thinking that we might be underutilizing your skills. You have shown organizational abilities and technical knowledge that go far beyond basic maintenance work. Perhaps there is a position we could create that would better suit your capabilities and compensate you more fairly." Karl felt a flutter of hope mixed with disbelief. "Are you serious?" he asked. "Very serious," Mrs. Svoboda said. "But let us get through this performance first. One challenge at a time." As Karl left her office, His mind was spinning. A different position, better pay, recognition of his skills. It seemed almost too good to be true. He tried not to get his hopes up too much, but the possibility opened a door in his imagination that he had kept firmly locked for years. The rehearsals that week were intense. Mrs. Markova drove everyone harder than ever, her perfectionism reaching almost unbearable levels. She stopped scenes repeatedly to correct tiny details, made children repeat their lines dozens of times, and snapped at parent volunteers who made even small mistakes. Karl could see the stress taking a toll on everyone. Several children developed stress-related headaches. One mother quit the costume team after Mrs. Markova criticized her work too harshly. Even Pavel, usually cheerful and easygoing, looked exhausted and frustrated. On Wednesday afternoon, things came to a head. During a full run-through, a 7th-grade girl named Petra forgot her dance steps in the middle of a complex routine. Mrs. Markova stopped the entire rehearsal and began lecturing Petra in front of everyone about the importance of practice and dedication. Petra tried to hold back tears, but eventually broke down sobbing. Karl watched from his position at the stage side, feeling his anger rise. He had remained quiet and deferential to Mrs. Markova throughout the entire process, understanding that she was the artistic director and he was just support staff. But watching a child be humiliated like this crossed a line for him. He stepped forward onto the stage, something he had never done during a rehearsal before. "Excuse me, Mrs. Markova," he said, his voice firm but polite. "May I speak with you privately for a moment?" Mrs. Markova looked startled by the interruption. "We are in the middle of rehearsal, Mr. Novak. It will only take a moment," Karl said. "It is important." Something in his tone made her agree. They stepped into the hallway outside the auditorium, and Karl closed the door behind them so the children would not hear. "With all respect," he said, "I think you need to ease up on the children. They are working as hard as they can. Pushing them harder is not making them better. It is making them scared." Mrs. Markova's face flushed with anger. "How dare you question my methods? I have been directing school performances for 8 years. I know what I am doing." "I am not questioning your knowledge," Karl said calmly. "I am questioning whether it is right to make children cry. These are not professional actors. They are kids who want to put on a good show for their parents. They need encouragement, not constant criticism." "You do not understand the pressure I am under," Mrs. Markova said, her voice rising. "This performance reflects on me, on my reputation. If it is not excellent, people will blame me." "Maybe it does not need to be excellent," Karl said. "Maybe it just needs to be good. Maybe the children trying their best is more important than perfection." Mrs. Markova stared at him, her mouth tight. "You are a janitor," she said coldly. "You clean floors. What do you know about artistic standards or educational methodology? This is not your area of expertise, so I suggest you stay in your lane and let me do my job." The words stung, cutting right to Karl's deepest insecurities. She was right, was she not? He was just a janitor. Who was he to challenge someone with education and experience? But then he thought about Petra crying, about Tomas's panic attack, about all the children who were starting to dread something that should bring them joy. "I may be a janitor," he said quietly, "but I have been watching these children for 3 weeks. I see how your criticism affects them. I see them losing confidence instead of gaining it, and I care about them too much to stay silent." Before Mrs. Markova could respond, The auditorium door opened, and Mrs. Svoboda stepped out. She had apparently heard their raised voices from inside. "Is there a problem here?" she asked. Mrs. Markova immediately composed herself. "No problem. Mr. Novak and I were just discussing different perspectives on managing the rehearsals." Mrs. Svoboda looked at both of them carefully. "I think both of you want the same thing, which is a successful performance that the children can be proud of. Mrs. Markova, you bring artistic excellence and high standards. Karl, you bring care and concern for the children's well-being. We need both of those things. Can you two find a way to work together for these final days?" There was a long pause. Finally, Mrs. Markova nodded stiffly. "Of course." Karl nodded as well. They returned to the auditorium, where the children and volunteers were waiting nervously. Mrs. Markova stood in front of the stage and took a breath. "I apologize for losing my temper," she said, and Karl could tell how much it cost her pride to say those words. "You are all working very hard, and I appreciate your dedication. Let us take a short break, and when we come back, we will run through that scene again. Petra, take your time and do not worry about making mistakes. That is what rehearsals are for." The children looked relieved and surprised. During the break, several of them came up to Karl. "Thank you for standing up for Petra," one girl whispered. "Mrs. Markova scares us sometimes. She means well," Karl said. "She wants the show to be good because she cares about all of you. But you are right to not be afraid. You are all doing wonderfully." When rehearsal resumed, the atmosphere was noticeably different. Mrs. Markova was still demanding and detail-oriented, but she softened her approach. She offered more praise along with her corrections. She smiled more. The children responded immediately, performing with more confidence and joy. By the end of the afternoon, they had completed their first clean run-through of the entire show without any major problems. That evening, as Karl was preparing to leave, Mrs. Markova approached him. She looked uncomfortable, as if unsure what to say. "You were right earlier," she said finally. "I was pushing too hard. I have always struggled with that. I want things to be perfect, and sometimes I forget that the process matters as much as the result. Thank you for reminding me. It took courage to confront me like that." Karl nodded. "We both want the same thing. We just have different ways of getting there." Mrs. Markova smiled slightly. "For a janitor, you have surprising wisdom. I suppose I should stop thinking of you as just a janitor. You are much more than that." After she left, Pavel came over with a grin on his face. "Did you really tell off Mrs. Markova?" he asked. "The whole school is going to hear about this by tomorrow." "I hope not," Karl said. "I was just trying to help." "You did more than help," Pavel said. "You showed real leadership. That takes guts, especially when you are going up against someone with authority over you." That night, Karl lay in bed thinking about the confrontation. Part of him was proud that he had stood up for the children, but another part worried that he had overstepped, that he had made things worse, that Mrs. Markova would resent him now. He thought about her calling him just a janitor, and how much those words had hurt, even though he knew she said them in anger. Was that how everyone saw him? Just the man who cleaned up after them? He thought about Mrs. Svoboda's offer to discuss a different position after the performance. Maybe this was his chance to change how people saw him, to prove that he was capable of more. Or maybe it was just false hope, and after the performance he would go right back to being invisible. The uncertainty kept him awake long into the night. The next day brought an unexpected visitor. During lunch break, as Karl was checking the stage rigging, a tall man in an expensive suit walked into the auditorium. He looked around with an air of evaluation, making notes on a tablet. Karl approached him. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man looked up. "I am David Czerny," he said. "I work for the Regional Education Board. We received a complaint about this production. I am here to observe a rehearsal and assess whether there are any safety concerns." Karl felt his stomach drop. A complaint about safety. That was his responsibility, his area of oversight. If there were safety issues, it would be his fault. "What kind of complaint?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "The complaint was anonymous," Mr. Czerny said. "Someone expressed concerns about the stage conditions, the number of children involved, and whether proper safety protocols are being followed. I need to see for myself." For the next 2 hours, Mr. Czerny watched the rehearsal with a critical eye. He examined the stage structure, asked questions about fire exits and emergency procedures, reviewed the rigging system, and observed how the children were supervised. Karl followed him around, answering every question, showing all his documentation, explaining every safety measure he had put in place. His heart pounded the entire time. If Mr. Czerny found problems, the performance could be cancelled. All this work, all these children's hopes, would be destroyed. Finally, Mr. Czerny finished his inspection. He asked to speak with Karl, Mrs. Svoboda, and Mrs. Markohosova in the principal's office. They all sat down nervously, waiting for his verdict. "I have completed my assessment," Mr. Czerny said, looking at his notes. "I found this facility to be in excellent condition from a safety standpoint. The stage has been thoroughly inspected and maintained. Safety protocols are clearly posted and followed. Adult supervision is adequate. Emergency exits are clearly marked and accessible. Someone has done exceptional work here." Karl felt relief wash over him like a wave. "Really?" Mrs. Svoboda said. "There are no concerns." "None whatsoever," Mr. Czerny said. "In fact, this is one of the better organized school productions I have evaluated. Whoever is in charge of safety and technical operations has clearly taken their responsibilities very seriously." "That would be Mr. Novak," Mrs. Svoboda said, gesturing to Karl. "He is our facilities manager." Karl wanted to correct her. He was the janitor, not the facilities manager. But she gave him a look that told him to stay quiet. Mr. Czerny turned to Karl with respect. "Excellent work, Mr. Novak. Your documentation is thorough, your safety measures are comprehensive, and your attention to detail is impressive. You should be proud of what you have accomplished here." After Mr. Czerny left, Mrs. Svoboda smiled at Karl. "Facilities manager," she said. "That has a better ring to it than janitor, does it not? Let us make that your official title starting next month, with a salary adjustment to match." Karl could barely believe what he was hearing. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Mrs. Svoboda said. "You have earned it." 5 days before the performance, Karl walked through the school with a different sense of himself. The title facilities manager felt strange and new, but it also felt right in a way that surprised him. For 15 years he had introduced himself as the janitor, had thought of himself in those terms, had accepted the invisibility that came with it. Now, suddenly, he was being seen differently. Teachers congratulated him on his promotion. Students asked him questions with more respect in their voices. Even the way Mrs. Svoboda spoke to him had changed, treating him more as a colleague than as support staff. But with the new recognition came increased pressure. The anonymous complaint had been resolved, but it reminded everyone how much was at stake. One serious accident, one major failure, and the entire event could be cancelled or worse. Karl felt the weight of 340 families counting on him to keep their children safe while they performed on stage. He doubled his safety checks, inspecting everything multiple times each day. The rehearsals were now running smoothly. Mrs. Marcoux had maintained her softer approach, and the children were responding beautifully. The show was coming together in a way that exceeded everyone's expectations. The first and second graders sang their snowflake song with adorable enthusiasm. The third and fourth graders performed a clever comedy sketch about Christmas shopping. The fifth graders, including Anichka, delivered their family drama with surprising emotional depth. The sixth grade choir's harmonies were genuinely impressive. And the seventh graders closed the show with an energetic dance number that brought everything together. Pavel had created a lighting design that transformed the simple school stage into something magical. Soft blues and whites for the winter scenes, warm golds and reds for the family moments, dramatic spotlights for the solo performances. The parent volunteers had crafted costumes that were creative and colorful. Mr. Prochaska's sets, with Karl's modifications, could be moved smoothly and created convincing backdrops for each scene. Everything was falling into place. On Tuesday evening, Karl stayed late after rehearsal to do his final major inspection before performance night. He went over every inch of the stage with meticulous care. He tested every light fixture, every electrical connection, every piece of rigging. He checked the stability of every set piece, the smoothness of every curtain pull, the reliability of every prop. He examined the audience seating, the emergency exits, the fire extinguishers, his notebook filled with check marks as each item passed inspection. As he was finishing, he noticed something odd. One of the large backdrop pieces, the painted winter scene that served as the main background for several acts, had a small crack in its wooden frame. It was not serious yet, but it was in a spot that bore significant weight. If it was not reinforced before the performance, it could potentially break during the show. Karl immediately went to find the materials he needed. In the basement storage room, he located some metal brackets and wood screws. He carried them back up to the stage and began the repair work. It was past 10 o'clock at night, and the school was dark and silent, except for the work lights on the stage. As he worked, Karl thought about how much had changed in just 3 weeks. He thought about the young man he had been, the one who dreamed of working in theatre. That dream had seemed dead for so many years, buried under responsibilities and compromises and the daily grind of survival. But it had never really died, he realized. It had just been waiting, sleeping, ready to wake up when given the chance. He thought about Marie and wished she could see him now. She had always believed he was capable of more than he believed himself. She used to tell him that he was the smartest person she knew, not because of formal education, but because of his ability to understand how things worked, to solve problems, to see what others missed. He had dismissed her words as the bias of love, but maybe she had seen something true. The crack in the backdrop frame was more serious than he initially thought. As he examined it more closely, he realized the entire support structure of that backdrop was flawed. It had been built years ago, probably by well-meaning but inexperienced volunteers, and it had been patched and repaired so many times that it was fundamentally unstable. The crack, he noticed, was just a symptom of a larger structural problem. Karl sat back on his heels and considered his options. He could try to patch it one more time and hope it held through the performance. But if it failed, if it collapsed during the show with children on stage, someone could be seriously hurt. The thought made his stomach turn. The only responsible choice was to rebuild the entire frame. That meant taking apart the backdrop, constructing a new support structure, and reassembling everything. It was a big job, probably 8 to 10 hours of work. And he had less than 5 days until the performance. He looked at his watch, 10:30. If he started now and worked through the night, he could probably finish by morning. But he had to be back at work at 7 o'clock for his regular duties, and there was another rehearsal tomorrow afternoon that he needed to oversee. The exhaustion would be brutal, but what choice did he have? The children's safety was not negotiable. Karol called home on the office phone. Aniczka answered, her voice sleepy. "Tatinek, where are you?" "I am still at school, sweetheart," Karol said. "I found something that needs to be fixed tonight. I am going to be very late. Will you be all right on your own?" "I am not a baby, Tatinek," Aniczka said, though her voice sounded small. "I will lock the door and go to sleep." "I will be there before you wake up," Karol promised. "I love you." "Love you too," she said, and hung up. Karol took a deep breath and began the work. He carefully removed the painted canvas from the wooden frame, rolling it up so it would not be damaged. Then he started dismantling the old frame, removing screws and brackets and separating the pieces. The wood was old, and some of it was rotted. No wonder it was failing. He would need to use fresh lumber for the rebuild. He made his way down to the maintenance workshop in the basement and selected the materials he needed. Lengths of strong pine, metal corner braces, quality screws, wood glue. He carried everything back up to the stage and laid it out systematically. Then he began building the new frame, measuring twice and cutting once, the way Joseph had taught him. The work was physical and demanding, but Karol found it meditative. His hands remembered skills he had not used in years. The smell of fresh-cut wood and the sound of the saw brought back memories of his brief time working in theater when he was young and everything seemed possible. He thought about the conversation with Pavel, about the possibility of working in a real theater. With his new title and responsibilities at the school, maybe it was not such a crazy idea after all. Maybe he could build a career doing something he actually loved, instead of just settling for what was safe. Around 2 a.m, Karol's phone rang. It was Joseph. "I was driving past the school and saw the lights on in the auditorium," the old man said. "Is everything all right?" "I am rebuilding one of the backdrop frames," Karol explained. "It was not safe." "Do you need help?" Joseph asked. "I can be there in 10 minutes. Karol felt a surge of gratitude. "That would be wonderful." "Thank you." Joseph arrived wearing his old work clothes and carrying a thermos of coffee. They worked together in comfortable silence, the way they had on so many projects over the years. Joseph's experienced hands made quick work of difficult joints and angles. By 4 a.m, the new frame was complete, stronger and more stable than the original had ever been. They carefully attached the painted canvas back to the new frame and positioned the backdrop in its place on the stage. Karol tested it from every angle, pushing and pulling to make sure it was solid. It did not budge. As they cleaned up, Joseph poured them both coffee from his thermos. They sat on the edge of the stage, their legs dangling, watching the sun begin to lighten the sky through the high auditorium windows. "You are different now," Joseph said. "More confident, more yourself. This job has been good for you." "It has reminded me of things I forgot about myself," Karol said. things I gave up on." "Maybe you did not give up on them," Joseph said. "Maybe they were just waiting for the right time. You are still young, Karl. You have time to become the person you were meant to be." "I am 42 with a daughter to raise," Karl said. "That is not so young." Joseph laughed. "I am 70, and I still do not think of myself as old. Age is just a number. What matters is whether you are alive inside, whether you still have dreams and plans. You were dead inside for a long time after Marie passed. I understood that. We all did. But now you are coming back to life. Do not waste it." They finished their coffee, and Joseph went home to get a few hours of sleep. Karl had just enough time to shower and change in the staff bathroom before his regular workday began. He was exhausted, his muscles aching, his eyes burning with fatigue. But he also felt a deep satisfaction. He had solved a problem that could have been dangerous. He had kept the children safe. That evening's rehearsal went beautifully. Nobody except Pavel noticed that one of the backdrops had been completely rebuilt overnight. The children performed with growing confidence, and even Mrs. Markova seemed pleased with their progress. During a break, she pulled Karl aside. "I have been thinking about what you said the other day," she told him, "about how the children need encouragement, not just criticism. I realize that I have been so focused on the artistic result that I forgot about the human element. Teaching is not just about producing excellent performances. It is about helping children grow and believe in themselves. You understood that better than I did, and you are not even a trained educator." "Maybe some things cannot be taught in school," Karl said. "Maybe they just come from caring about people." Mrs. Markova smiled. "You are a wise man, Karl Novak. I am glad you are part of this production." On Wednesday, 3 days before the performance, the entire cast and crew gathered for a dress rehearsal. This would be the final complete run-through before the actual show. Everyone wore their full costumes, all technical elements were in place, and they would perform the entire show exactly as it would happen on performance night. The auditorium was empty of audience, but the nervous energy was palpable. Karl took his position at the stage left wing, his notebook in hand, every sense alert. The lights dimmed, the curtain rose, and the show began. For the next 90 minutes, Karl watched with pride and anxiety as 3 weeks of work unfolded before his eyes. The first graders sang their snowflake song with innocent sweetness. The third graders got big laughs with their shopping sketch. The fifth graders, including Anichka, delivered their dramatic scene with surprising maturity. Anichka's 4 lines were perfect, her voice clear and strong, and Karl felt his eyes sting with tears as he watched his little girl shine on stage. The show flowed smoothly from one act to the next. The transitions that had once taken 5 minutes now took less than 2. Costumes were changed efficiently in the color-coded zones backstage. Props appeared at exactly the right moments. The lighting cues were perfectly timed. The sets moved smoothly on their wheels. Everything worked exactly as it should. When the final act ended and the curtain fell, there was a moment of stunned silence, and then everyone backstage erupted in cheers. The children hugged each other, the parent volunteers celebrated, and even Mrs. Markov allowed herself a genuine smile of satisfaction. Mrs. Svoboda, who had been watching from the back of the auditorium, came backstage to address everyone. "That was magnificent," she said. "I am so proud of all of you. Students, you were wonderful. Parents and volunteers, thank you for your dedication. Mrs. Markova, Your artistic vision has created something truly special. And Karl, your technical work and safety oversight have made all of this possible. Thank you for your exceptional commitment." Everyone applauded, and Karl felt his face flush with embarrassment and pleasure. He had never been publicly recognized like this before, had never been singled out for praise in front of a group. It felt overwhelming and wonderful at the same time. That night, as he and Anichka walked home together, she would not stop talking about the dress rehearsal. "It felt so real, Tatinek," she said excitedly. "Like we were actual actors in a real show. And when I said my lines, I could see you watching from the side of the stage, and it made me feel so brave." "You were incredible," Karl said, squeezing her hand. "I was the proudest father in the world watching you up there." Anichka beamed. "Only 3 more days until the real performance. I cannot wait for everyone to see what we have done." As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, Karl thought about those 3 remaining days. 3 days until everything they had worked for would be put to the test in front of hundreds of people. 3 days until his sister Eva would see him in his new role. 3 days until he would prove to himself and to everyone else that he was more than just a janitor who cleaned floors. 3 days, and then everything would change. 2 days before the performance, Karl arrived at school at his usual early hour. The winter morning was bitterly cold, and frost covered the windows of the old building. He unlocked the auditorium door and stepped inside, expecting everything to be exactly as they had left it after yesterday's final rehearsal. Instead, he found chaos. The stage was in complete disarray. Set pieces had been knocked over and damaged. Costumes were scattered across the floor, some of them torn. Props were broken or missing entirely. The carefully organized backstage area had been ransacked. Paint had been spilled across the stage floor. One of the curtains had been partially pulled down from its rigging. Karl stood frozen in shock, trying to process what he was seeing. Then his training took over, and he moved into action. First, he checked for any immediate safety hazards. Then he pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Svoboda. "You need to come to the auditorium right now," he said, his voice tight, with controlled urgency. "There has been an incident." Mrs. Svoboda arrived within 15 minutes, still in her coat and scarf. When she saw the destruction, her face went pale. "Oh no," she whispered. "Who would do this? I do not know," Karl said. "But we need to call the police and document everything before we touch anything." They called the local police station and waited. Karl used the time to take photographs of the damage with his phone, creating a record of everything he saw. His mind was racing with implications. The performance was in 2 days. 2 days to repair or replace everything that had been destroyed. 2 days to restore order from this chaos. 2 days that suddenly seemed impossibly short. The police arrived and spent an hour examining the scene. The officer in charge, a middle-aged man named Sergeant Novotny, asked questions and made notes. There was no sign of forced entry, which suggested that whoever did this either had a key or knew how to pick the lock. Nothing appeared to have been stolen, which ruled out ordinary theft. This looked like deliberate vandalism, possibly by someone with a grudge against the school or the performance. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" Sergeant Novotny asked. Karl and Mrs. Svoboda looked at each other. Karl thought about the anonymous complaint that had brought the inspector from the Regional Education Board. Could that be connected? Mrs. Svoboda mentioned a parent who had been angry when his son was not given a larger role in the show. There was also the mother who quit the costume team after Mrs. Markova criticized her work. But these were just speculations, nothing concrete. "We will investigate," Sergeant Novotny said. "In the meantime, you should focus on securing this space better and repairing the damage if you still plan to proceed with your performance." After the police left, Mrs. Svoboda and Karl stood on the stage surveying the destruction. Mrs. Svoboda looked overwhelmed, close to tears. "Maybe we should cancel," she said quietly. "How can we possibly fix all of this in 2 days? The children have worked so hard." "We cannot cancel," Karl said firmly. "We will find a way to fix this. Let me assess the damage properly and make a plan." Mrs. Markova arrived shortly after, summoned by Mrs. Svoboda's call. When she saw the vandalized stage, she actually gasped aloud. "This is a disaster," she said. "Months of work, destroyed. We have to cancel. There is no way to recover from this." "We are not cancelling," Karl said again, his voice stronger this time. "Give me until noon to develop a plan. Then we can make a decision based on facts, not panic." Something in his tone made both women stop and look at him. There was an authority in his voice that had not been there before, a confidence born from 3 weeks of solving problems and taking responsibility. "All right," Mrs. Svoboda said. "You have until noon." Karl spent the next 4 hours conducting the most thorough assessment of his young life. He catalogued every single item that was damaged or destroyed. He measured and photographed. He tested what could be repaired and what needed to be replaced. He calculated how much time each repair would take. He considered what resources he had available and what he would need to acquire. By noon, he had a complete inventory and a detailed plan. He called a meeting in Mrs. Svoboda's office with her, Mrs. Markova, and Pavel. He laid out his notebook with all his findings. "Here is the situation," he began. 23 items are damaged or destroyed. Of those, 17 can be repaired with materials we have on hand. 4 need replacement parts that I can purchase today from the hardware store. 2 props are beyond repair and will need to be completely rebuilt. The stage floor needs to be cleaned and repainted in the damaged areas. The curtain needs to be rehung, which is a 4-hour job. If we work through today and tomorrow, we can have everything ready by performance night. But I cannot do it alone. I need help." "What kind of help?" Mrs. Svoboda asked. "I need Pavel full-time for technical repairs," Karl said. "I need Mr. Proshaska and 2 other parents who are good with tools to help rebuild the damaged set pieces. I need Mrs. Horakova and the costume team to repair or replace the damaged costumes. I need 4 strong volunteers to help me clean and repaint the stage floor. And I need everyone to be available to work late into tonight and all day tomorrow." Mrs. Svoboda looked at him thoughtfully. "You really think we can do this?" "Yes," Karl said. "But only if we start immediately and everyone commits fully." Mrs. Markova had been quiet during this exchange. Now she spoke up. "I was wrong to suggest cancelling," she said. "You are right, Karl. These children have worked too hard to let vandalism defeat us. I will contact all the parent volunteers and get everyone here this afternoon." Pavel nodded. "I am in. Whatever you need, I will do it." Mrs. Svoboda made the decision. "All right, we proceed with the plan. Karl, you are in charge of the recovery effort. Whatever you need, you have my full support." By 1 o'clock, word had spread through the school about what happened. The children were devastated when they heard the news during lunch period. Many of them cried. Anichka came running to find Karol in the auditorium, tears streaming down her face. "Tatinek, is it true?" she asked. "Is the show ruined?" "Not if I have anything to say about it," Karol told her, kneeling down to her level. "We are going to fix everything. But I need you and all the other children to be patient and trust us adults to solve this problem. Can you do that?" Anichka wiped her eyes and nodded. "I trust you, Tatinek. You always fix things." By 2 o'clock, volunteers started arriving. Parents who had taken time off work, teachers who cancelled their afternoon plans, even some high school students from the nearby secondary school who heard about the vandalism and wanted to help. Karol organized them into teams, assigning specific tasks to each group. He sent Pavel and 2 parents to the hardware store with a detailed shopping list. He set Mr. Prochaska and 3 other skilled volunteers to work rebuilding the damaged set pieces. He assigned the costume team to the damaged wardrobe. He personally led the team that would clean and repaint the stage floor. The auditorium became a hive of coordinated activity. The sound of hammering and sawing filled the air. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the scent of wood glue. People moved with purpose, following Karol's detailed plan and checking in with him regularly for guidance and approval. Joseph arrived unannounced around 3 o'clock. "I heard what happened," he said. "I came to help." Karol felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you. I need someone to supervise the curtain repair while I focus on the stage floor." Joseph nodded and got to work. As the afternoon progressed, Karol moved between different teams, troubleshooting problems, offering encouragement, making small adjustments to the plan as circumstances required. He was everywhere at once, it seemed, always knowing exactly what needed to happen next and who could best accomplish it. Around 6 o'clock, Elena appeared with large containers of soup and sandwiches. "I figured everyone would be too busy to think about dinner," she said. "So I made food." The volunteers took a short break to eat, grateful for the nourishment and the chance to rest for a few minutes. Karol barely had time to swallow a few bites before someone called him to solve another problem. By 10 o'clock that night, they had made remarkable progress. The stage floor was cleaned and the first coat of paint applied. 2 of the major set pieces were rebuilt. Most of the costumes were repaired. The shopping team had returned with all necessary supplies. The curtain was successfully rehung. But there was still so much work to do, and everyone was exhausted. Karol called the group together. "You have all done incredible work today," he said. "I know you are tired. Go home. Get some rest. We will start again tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock and finish what we started." As people filed out, many of them stopped to thank Karol or pat him on the shoulder. Mr. Prochaska shook his hand firmly. "You are a good man, Karol Novak," he said. "A good leader. You kept us all focused and moving forward when it would have been easy to give up." After everyone left, Karol stayed behind to do one final check of the day's work. Pavel stayed with him. "This is going to work," Pavel said. "I was not sure this morning, but now I believe we can actually pull this off." "We have to," Karol said simply. "Too many people are counting on us." As they locked up and prepared to leave, Pavel hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "How do you do it?" Pavel asked. "How do you stay so calm under pressure? How do you always seem to know what to do?" Karol thought about the question. "I do not always know what to do, he admitted. But I learned a long time ago that panicking does not help. When Marie was sick and dying, I had to learn to function while my world was falling apart. I had to keep taking care of Anichka, keep going to work, keep doing what needed to be done even when I felt like I could not go on. That taught me that you can endure almost anything if you focus on the next task, the next moment, instead of being overwhelmed by the big picture. Pavel nodded slowly. That makes sense. You are stronger than you realize, Karol said. We all are. We just do not usually get tested enough to find out. Karol walked home through the cold night streets, his body aching with exhaustion, but his mind strangely alert. The vandalism had been a shock, a cruel attack on something good and innocent. But in responding to it, he had discovered something about himself. He had taken charge naturally, without hesitation or self-doubt. People had looked to him for leadership, and he had provided it. He had made decisions quickly and correctly under pressure. This was who he was meant to be, he realized. Not invisible, not background, not just someone who cleaned up after others. He was someone who solved problems, who led people, who made things happen. The vandalism had tried to destroy the performance, but instead it had revealed Karol's true capabilities. When he got home, he found Anichka still awake, sitting on the couch in her pajamas. I could not sleep, she said. I was worried. Karol sat beside her and told her about everything they had accomplished that day, about all the people who came to help, about how they were going to fix everything and the show would go on as planned. Anichka listened with wide eyes. You are like a superhero, Tatinek, she said. Not a superhero, Karol said. Just a father who does not want to let his daughter down. That is even better than a superhero, Anichka said, hugging him tight. As Karol finally lay down to sleep that night, his last thought before exhaustion claimed him was a strange one. He found himself almost grateful for the vandalism, not for the destruction itself, but for what it had revealed. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show us who we really are. Sometimes we need to be tested to discover our strength. Tomorrow would be another long day of intense work. But Karol was ready for it. More than ready. He was eager to prove that nothing, not vandalism, not doubt, not fear, could stop him from fulfilling his responsibility to those children and their families. The day before the performance, Karol woke at 4:30 in the morning, after only 4 hours of sleep. His entire body protested as he stood up, muscles stiff and aching from the previous day's intense physical work. But his mind was clear and focused. Today was the final day of preparation, the last chance to make everything perfect before tomorrow night's performance. He drank his coffee standing at the kitchen window, watching the dark street below and mentally reviewing the tasks that had to be accomplished. The list was still long, but it was manageable. The stage floor needed its final coat of paint. The rebuilt set pieces needed to be tested for stability. The repaired costumes needed final fittings. Every technical element needed one last check, and they needed to do at least one full run-through so the children could practice in the restored space. By 6 o'clock, Karol was at the school. He unlocked the auditorium and stood for a moment looking at what they had accomplished yesterday. The space that had been chaos 24 hours ago now looked almost normal again. Not perfect yet, but on its way. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work. The stage floor paint had dried overnight, and he applied the final coat carefully, working section by section so the paint would be even and smooth. This was meticulous work that required patience and attention to detail. While he painted, his mind wandered to thoughts about who might have vandalized the stage. The police had found no leads yet. Sergeant Novotny had called last night to say they were interviewing people who had access to the building, but so far nothing conclusive. Part of Karl wanted justice, wanted whoever did this to be caught and punished. But a larger part of him just wanted to move forward, to not let anger and bitterness poison what should be a joyful event. Volunteers began arriving at 7 o'clock as planned. Mr. Prochaska and his team immediately resumed work on the remaining set pieces. Mrs. Horakova brought the costume team to continue their repairs. Pavel arrived with fresh energy and a determination to complete all technical preparations. Joseph came with his toolbox and quiet competence. By 8 o'clock, the auditorium was once again filled with purposeful activity. Mrs. Svoboda visited mid-morning to check on progress. She walked through the space with Karl, examining everything carefully. "This is remarkable," she said. "I honestly did not think we could recover from yesterday's disaster. But you are making it happen." "We all are," Karl said. "Everyone has worked incredibly hard." "No," Mrs. Svoboda said firmly. "Yes, everyone has contributed. But you are the one who made it possible. You created the plan, organized the work, kept everyone focused and motivated. This is your achievement, Karl. Do not diminish it with modesty." Her words touched something deep in Karl. For so long he had been comfortable being invisible, deflecting attention, minimizing his own contributions. But maybe it was time to accept that he had done something worth recognizing. Maybe it was time to be proud of himself. Around 10 o'clock, Mrs. Markova arrived with some of the children. She wanted them to see the progress, to reassure them that the show would indeed go on. When the children saw the restored stage, their faces lit up with relief and excitement. "You fixed everything," one little boy exclaimed, running up to Karl. "You are amazing." Karl knelt down to the child's level. "A lot of people worked together to fix everything," he said gently. "That is what makes it special. When something bad happens, good people come together to make it right again." The children scattered across the stage, examining the repaired sets and talking excitedly about tomorrow's performance. Anichka stood beside her father, looking around with pride. "I told all my friends you would fix everything," she said. "I knew you would not let us down." Karl hugged her. "I will never let you down, if I can possibly help it," he promised. By noon, the major repairs were complete. The set pieces were rebuilt and tested. The costumes were repaired and ready. The stage floor was painted and drying. The technical systems were all functioning. They were ready for a full technical rehearsal. Mrs. Markova gathered everyone for a meeting. She looked tired, but determined. "All right," she said. "We have one afternoon to run through the entire show and make sure everything still works after all these repairs. Children, I need you to give me your absolute best focus. Parents and volunteers, I need you at your stations ready to support." "Karl, Pavel, are we ready from a technical standpoint?" "We are ready," Karl confirmed. "Let us do this," Mrs. Markova said. The rehearsal began at 1 o'clock. From the first moment, it was clear that something had changed. The children performed with an intensity and commitment that went beyond anything Karl had seen before. The near loss of their show had made them appreciate it more, fight harder for it. They delivered their lines with passion, sang their songs with full voice, executed their dance moves with precision. The parent volunteers worked with smooth efficiency, having learned their roles so thoroughly over the past weeks that even the disruption of the vandalism had not shaken their competence. Costumes were changed quickly. Props appeared exactly when needed. Sets moved seamlessly. Pavel's lighting was perfect, creating exactly the right mood for each scene. And Karol watched it all from his position at stage left, his heart swelling with emotion. This was more than just a school performance now. It had become something deeper, a testament to resilience and community and the refusal to let destructive forces win. When Anichka's scene came, Karol watched with tears in his eyes as his daughter spoke her lines with confidence and grace. She had grown so much in these past weeks, become braver and more self-assured. He realized that this experience had transformed her just as it had transformed him. The rehearsal ran for 90 minutes without any significant problems. When it ended, there was spontaneous applause from everyone backstage. Mrs. Markova stood on the stage, and for the first time since Karol had known her, she looked genuinely emotional. "That was beautiful," she said, her voice thick. "You have all made me so proud. Tomorrow night, we are going to give a performance that this town will remember for years. Now go home, rest, eat well, and come back tomorrow ready to shine." As people began to leave, Sergeant Novotny appeared at the auditorium door. He asked to speak with Mrs. Svoboda and Karol privately. They went to the principal's office, and the sergeant closed the door. "We have made an arrest," he said. "The vandalism was committed by Markus Dvorak, the son of our regular security guard. He is 17 years old, and admitted to everything." Karol felt shock ripple through him. Mr. Dvorak's son. But why? According to his statement, Sergeant Novotny said, he was angry that his father lost the security job for the performance because of his knee surgery. The boy felt it was unfair that his father was replaced. He thought if he damaged the stage enough, the performance would be cancelled, and somehow that would prove his father was necessary. It was misguided teenage logic, combined with resentment and poor impulse control. "What will happen to him?" Mrs. Svoboda asked. "That depends partly on whether you want to press charges," Sergeant Novotny said. "He is a minor with no prior record. His father is devastated and has offered to pay for all damages. The boy has expressed genuine remorse. But legally, this is serious vandalism, and you would be within your rights to pursue prosecution." Karol and Mrs. Svoboda looked at each other. Karol thought about Mr. Dvorak, a good man who had worked at the school for over a decade. He thought about being 17 and angry and making terrible choices. He thought about forgiveness and second chances. "What do you think, Karol?" Mrs. Svoboda asked. "I think we do not press charges," Karol said slowly. "The damage is repaired. The show is happening. The boy made a terrible mistake, but he is young enough to learn from it. Punishing him harshly will not make anything better. Maybe instead, he could volunteer some community service hours at the school. Learn about the work that goes into creating something instead of destroying it." Mrs. Svoboda nodded. "I agree. Sergeant Novotny, please inform the family that we will not press charges on the condition that the boy completes 50 hours of community service at the school and writes formal apologies to everyone affected." Sergeant Novotny looked relieved. "That is generous of you both. I will convey your terms to the family." After he left, Mrs. Svoboda turned to Karol. "That was a wise and compassionate decision," she said. "You could have demanded punishment, and no one would have blamed you given how much extra work this caused. But you chose mercy instead." "I have made my share of mistakes," Karol said. "I know what it is like to need a second chance." That evening, Karol took Aniczka out for a special dinner at a small restaurant on Main Street. It was a rare treat for them, something they could not usually afford, but Karol felt they both deserved it after the stress of the past few days. They sat in a corner booth and ordered pastern and dessert. "You seem happy, Tatinek," Aniczka observed as they ate. "Happier than usual." "Do I?" Karol asked. "I guess I am. I feel like I have been asleep for a long time, and now I am finally waking up." "What were you dreaming about while you were asleep?" Aniczka asked. Karol smiled at her literal interpretation. "I was not really asleep, sweetheart. I just mean that I forgot who I used to be, what I was capable of. This whole experience with the performance has reminded me." "Do you like who you used to be?" Aniczka asked. "I do," Karol said. "I think I like him better than who I became after your mother died. After she died, I just focused on surviving each day, on taking care of you and paying the bills. I stopped thinking about my own dreams or possibilities. But these past few weeks have shown me that maybe I can be more. Maybe we both can be more." Aniczka reached across the table and took his hand. "Mama would be proud of you," she said seriously. "I think she is watching from heaven and smiling." Karol felt tears sting his eyes. "I hope so," he said softly. "I really hope so." After dinner, they walked home slowly through the cold December night. The streets were decorated with Christmas lights, and storefronts glowed with holiday displays. The town looked peaceful and beautiful, and Karol felt a deep appreciation for this simple place that had been his home for so long. When they reached their apartment, they found a message on the answering machine. It was from Karol's sister Eva. She and her family would be arriving tomorrow afternoon, and wanted to take Karol and Aniczka out for lunch before the performance. Karol felt his stomach tighten with the old anxiety about seeing his sister. But then he reminded himself that he was different now. He had accomplished something significant. He had proven his worth. He did not need Eva's approval anymore, though it would be nice to have it. He called her back and confirmed the lunch plans. That night, as Karol was preparing for bed, his phone rang. It was Pavel. "I just wanted to say thank you," Pavel said. "For what?" Karol asked. "For showing me what real leadership looks like," Pavel said. "I have been working in theater for 5 years now, and I have seen a lot of different people in charge. But I have never seen anyone handle a crisis the way you handled this one. You did not panic. You did not blame anyone. You just focused on solutions. You brought everyone together and made them believe they could do the impossible. That is a gift, Karol. Do not ever forget that you have it." After they hung up, Karol sat on the edge of his bed and absorbed Pavel's words. A gift. Leadership. These were not words he had ever associated with himself. But maybe they were true. Maybe this whole experience had revealed something that was always inside him, just waiting for the right circumstances to emerge. He looked at the alarm clock. 11:15. In less than 24 hours, the performance would be over. All this work, all this stress, all this transformation would reach its culmination. He felt nervous and excited and grateful all at once. Tomorrow night, 340 people would fill that auditorium. They would watch over 100 children perform on a stage that had been vandalized and restored. They would see costumes that had been torn and repaired. They would enjoy a show that had almost been cancelled. And most of them would never know how close they came to having none of it. But Karl would know. He would stand at the side of that stage and watch everything he had worked so hard to protect and preserve unfold before an appreciative audience. He would see Anichka speak her lines. He would see all those children shine. And he would know, with absolute certainty, that he had done something that mattered. He was not just a janitor anymore. He was not just invisible. He was Karl Novak, facilities manager, problem solver, leader. He was a man who could be counted on when things went wrong. He was a father his daughter could be proud of. He was someone who made a difference. Tomorrow would be the test of everything they had worked for. But Karl was ready. More ready than he had been for anything in a very long time. The day of the performance arrived with clear, cold skies and a sense of anticipation that seemed to hang in the air like electricity. Karl woke early, as had become his habit, but this morning felt different. This was the day everything would either come together perfectly or fall apart spectacularly. There was no middle ground, no room for error. He made breakfast for Anichka, who was too excited to eat more than a few bites. She talked non-stop about the performance, about her costume, about hoping she would not forget her lines. Karl listened patiently, offering reassurance and gentle reminders to breathe and stay calm. At noon, Eva arrived with her husband, Martin, and their 2 sons, ages 7 and 10. They met at a restaurant near the school, and Karl felt the familiar tension that always came with seeing his sister. Eva looked polished and professional as always, wearing an expensive coat and carrying a designer handbag. Her husband worked in finance, and they lived in a large house in the capital city. Their sons were well-dressed and well-behaved, the products of private schools and careful parenting. So Eva said after they ordered, "Tell me about this facilities manager position. That is quite a step up from janitor." "Mrs. Svoboda felt my skills were being underutilized," Karl said simply. "She created a new position for me with more responsibilities and better compensation." Eva raised her eyebrows. "Good for you. I always thought you were capable of more than you allowed yourself to achieve. Maybe you are finally living up to your potential." The comment stung, even though it was probably meant as a compliment. Karl forced a smile and changed the subject. "How is your work going?" Eva launched into a description of her latest case, something involving corporate law and large sums of money. Karl listened politely, but found his mind wandering. He thought about the auditorium, about all the final preparations that needed to happen this afternoon. He thought about the children who were probably at home getting ready, feeling nervous and excited. At 2:00, Karl excused himself. "I need to get to the school," he said. "There is still work to do before the performance tonight." "We will see you at 7, Eva said. "I must say, I am curious to see what all this fuss is about." Karl and Anichka walked to the school together, leaving Eva and her family to explore the town for a few hours. As soon as they entered the auditorium, Karl felt the familiar sense of purpose settle over him. This was his domain now, his responsibility. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Parent volunteers arrived to set up the audience seating and check the ticket table. The costume team prepared the dressing areas backstage. Pavel ran through all the technical systems one final time, testing every light and sound cue. Mrs. Marco arrived early to meet with the children as they began showing up, all of them buzzing with nervous energy. Karl moved through it all with calm efficiency, solving small problems before they could become big ones. A wobbly chair in the audience was tightened. A costume zipper that broke was quickly replaced. A prop sword that went missing was located in the wrong storage area. Each issue was addressed methodically, checked off his mental list, and forgotten as he moved to the next task. By 5:30, all the children had arrived and were in their costumes. Karl could hear Mrs. Markova giving them a pep talk in the backstage area, her voice carrying the perfect mix of encouragement and expectation. He smiled, thinking about how much she had changed over these past weeks, how she had learned to balance her drive for excellence with compassion for the children. At 6 o'clock, the doors opened and audience members began filing in. Karl positioned himself near the entrance, greeting people and directing them to their seats. He saw familiar faces from the community, proud parents with cameras, excited grandparents, younger siblings squirming in their seats. The auditorium filled quickly, the murmur of conversation growing louder as more people arrived. At 6:40, Karl saw Eva and her family enter. He waved to them, and they found their seats near the middle of the auditorium. Eva looked around with an appraising eye, and Karl wondered what she was thinking. Was she impressed by the turnout, or did she see this as just a small-town event, charming but ultimately insignificant compared to the cultural events she attended in the city? By 6:55, every seat was filled, and people were standing at the back. Mrs. Svoboda made her way to the stage, and the audience quieted. She welcomed everyone and thanked them for their support. She acknowledged the hard work of Mrs. Markova and all the volunteers. Then she said something that made Karl's heart squeeze with emotion. "I also want to recognize someone who has been absolutely essential to making this evening possible. Our facilities manager, Karol Novak, has worked tirelessly to ensure the safety and success of this production. He has gone far beyond his job description, demonstrating leadership, dedication, and genuine care for our students. Karol, would you please stand so everyone can see who you are?" Karol felt his face flush as he stood from his position at the side of the stage. The entire audience applauded, and he saw Anichka peeking out from backstage, beaming with pride. He caught Eva's eye in the audience and saw surprise on her face, as if she was seeing her brother for the first time. Mrs. Svoboda concluded her remarks and left the stage. The house lights dimmed. A hush fell over the audience. Karol took his position at stage left, his notebook in hand, every sense alert. This was the moment. Everything they had worked for would now be tested. The curtain rose, and the first act began. The younger children sang their snowflake song with sweet innocence, their high voices filling the auditorium. The audience responded with warm laughter and appreciative applause. Karol watched from the wings, monitoring everything, ready to respond to any problem. But there were no problems. The transitions between acts happened smoothly, exactly as practiced. Costumes were changed quickly in the color-coded zones. Props appeared at the right moments. The lighting cues were perfect, transforming the simple stage into different worlds with each scene. The rebuilt sets held firm and solid. Everything worked exactly as it should. As each act finished and the next began, Karol felt his confidence growing. They had done it. They had recovered from the vandalism and created something beautiful. The 3rd and 4th grade comedy sketch got genuine laughs from the audience. The timing was perfect, the children playing their roles with enthusiasm and humor. Karol saw parents in the audience smiling and pointing at their kids on stage. Then came Anichka's act, the 5th grade family drama. Karol's heart rate increased as he watched his daughter walk onto the stage with her classmates. She looked so small up there under the lights, but she moved with confidence. The scene began, and Karl found himself mouthing the words along with the actors. He knew every line by heart from weeks of rehearsals. When Anichka's moment came, she delivered her first line perfectly. Her voice was clear and strong, carrying to the back of the auditorium. Karl felt tears prick his eyes. She spoke her second line, then her third. Each one was perfect. The audience was completely ensorted, leaning forward in their seats. Then, just as Anichka was about to deliver her final line, there was a loud crack from above. One of the stage lights had come loose from its rigging. Time seemed to slow down as Karl watched the heavy light fixture swing downward on its cable, heading directly toward where Anichka and 3 other children stood. Without thinking, without hesitation, Karl moved. He ran onto the stage, his body operating on pure instinct. He reached Anichka and the other children in seconds and pushed them hard to the side, out of the path of the falling light. The fixture crashed onto the stage floor, exactly where they had been standing, the bulb shattering with a sound like a gunshot. The audience gasped and screamed. Children backstage began crying. The actors on stage froze in shock. Karl immediately took control. "Everyone off the stage now," he commanded in a voice that was loud and authoritative, calmly and quickly. "No running." The children obeyed immediately, filing off the stage in an orderly manner. Karl turned to the audience. "Please remain calm and stay in your seats," he called out. "Everyone is safe. We have everything under control." He ran to the electrical panel and shut off power to all the stage lights, plunging the auditorium into semi-darkness with only the emergency lights providing illumination. Then he examined the fallen fixture and the rigging system it had come from. What he saw made his blood run cold. The cable that held the light had not simply failed. It had been cut nearly all the way through, leaving just enough strength to hold during rehearsals, but designed to fail under the heat and weight of actual performance conditions. This was not an accident. This was sabotage, a second attack more dangerous than the first. Someone had intended to hurt these children. Mrs. Svoboda and Mrs. Markova rushed to Karl's side. "What happened?" Mrs. Svoboda asked, her voice shaking. "The rigging was sabotaged," Karl said grimly. "Look at this cable." It was cut deliberately. Mrs. Markova looked like she might faint. "Oh my God! The children could have been killed." "But they were not," Karl said firmly. "And we are not going to let whoever did this win. We are going to finish this performance." Mrs. Svoboda stared at Karl in disbelief. "You cannot be serious. A light just fell from the ceiling. The stage is damaged. The children are terrified. How can we possibly continue?" "Because if we stop now," Karl said, his voice steady and certain, "then whoever did this wins. They wanted to ruin this performance, to hurt these children and destroy something good. If we cancel now, they succeed. But if we finish what we started, we show that evil does not get the final word." Mrs. Markova looked at the damaged stage, at the shattered glass, at the children huddled backstage. "But how?" she asked. "The stage lights are off. We cannot perform in the dark." "We do not need the overhead lights," Karl said. "Pavel, can you work with just the side spots and the portable lights?" Pavel appeared from the lighting booth, already thinking through the problem. "Yes," he said. "It will not be as sophisticated, but I can create enough light to see by. Give me 15 minutes to rewire and reposition." "Call the police first," Mrs. Svoboda said. "We need to report this." Already done, Sergeant Novotny said, appearing from the audience. I was here watching the show when this happened. I saw the whole thing. He looked at Karl with new respect. That was incredibly brave, Mr. Novak. You saved those children's lives. You reacted faster than I could even process what was happening. Karl shook his head. Anyone would have done the same. No, Sergeant Novotny said. Most people would have frozen. You acted on instinct and training. Those children are alive because of you. Now, about the sabotage. Who has had access to this stage? Karl thought quickly. After the vandalism, we changed the locks, and I personally kept the only key. But during setup today, dozens of people have been in and out. Parent volunteers, teachers, the children themselves. Anyone could have accessed the rigging system if they knew what they were doing. I need to examine that cable more closely, Sergeant Novotny said. But you are right that someone knew what they were doing. This was not random vandalism. This was attempted murder. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Mrs. Svoboda looked like she might be sick. We have to cancel now, she said. We cannot risk the children's safety. Karl looked around at the faces watching him, the frightened children backstage, the shocked parents in the audience, Eva and her family sitting in stunned silence, and Anichka, his precious daughter, standing in the wings with tears on her face. He thought about the past 3 weeks, about everything they had overcome, about the transformation he had experienced. He thought about what this performance meant to these children, how hard they had worked, how much they had invested, and he knew, with absolute certainty, what had to be done. I will personally inspect every single element of this stage, Karl said. Every light, every curtain, every set piece, every cable, every connection. I will check everything twice. If I find anything else that looks suspicious or unsafe, we cancel immediately. But if everything checks out, we finish the show. Mrs. Svoboda hesitated. That will take hours. We cannot ask the audience to wait. Then we give them a choice, Karl said. We explain what happened, we tell them we need 30 minutes to make the stage completely safe, and we let them decide if they want to stay or leave. But we give these children a chance to finish what they started. Mrs. Svoboda looked at Mrs. Markova, who nodded slowly. All right, Mrs. Svoboda said. But Karl, if you find anything else wrong, anything at all, we stop immediately. No arguments. Agreed, Karl said. Mrs. Svoboda walked back onto the darkened stage and addressed the audience. Her voice was calm but serious as she explained what had happened, that the light failure was not an accident, but deliberate sabotage. There were gasps and angry murmurs from the crowd. She explained that they were going to inspect every element of the stage to ensure complete safety, and that would take approximately 30 minutes. Anyone who wished to leave was welcome to do so with a full refund. But for those who wanted to stay and support the children, they would finish the performance once the stage was certified safe. Not a single person left. In fact, several fathers stood up and volunteered to help with the inspection. Mr. Prochaska came forward, along with 3 other men who had construction or engineering experience. We know this stage, Mr. Prochaska said. We helped build some of these sets. Let us help you check everything. Karl organized them into teams. He sent one group to examine all the remaining overhead rigging, checking every cable, every bolt, every connection. He sent another to inspect the structural elements of the stage itself, looking for any signs of tampering. He assigned a 3rd team to check all electrical connections and the lighting system that Pavel was rewiring. He took the most critical task for himself, examining every element that would be in close proximity to the children during the performance. Joseph appeared at his side. "I heard what happened and came as fast as I could," the old man said. "Put me to work." Karl felt a wave of gratitude for his mentor and friend. "Check the curtain system and all the backstage rigging," he said. "Look for anything that seems wrong, any cable that looks worn or cut, any connection that seems loose." Joseph nodded and got to work. For the next 30 minutes, the auditorium was filled with purposeful activity. Teams of men climbed ladders and examined rigging systems. Pavel rewired the lighting with fierce concentration. Karl moved systematically through every element of the stage, his trained eye looking for anything out of place, any sign of further sabotage. The audience watched in fascination, many of them taking photos and videos with their phones. This was not the performance they expected to see, but it was perhaps more compelling. They were witnessing a community come together in the face of danger, refusing to let evil triumph. Backstage, Mrs. Markova gathered the children. She spoke to them in a voice that was both gentle and strong. "What happened tonight was frightening," she said. "But it showed us something important. It showed us that there are people who will always protect us, people like Mr. Novak, who would risk their own safety to keep us safe. And it showed us that when bad things happen, we have a choice. We can give up, or we can find the courage to continue. I know you are all scared. That is okay. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do what needs to be done even when you are scared. So I am asking you now, do you want to finish our show?" The children looked at each other. Then, one by one, they nodded. Anichka stepped forward. "Mr. Novak is my Tartinek," she said. "He taught me that we do not give up when things get hard. We keep going. I want to finish our show." The other children agreed. They were shaken, but they were not broken. As the 30-minute mark approached, Karl completed his final check. He had examined everything multiple times. Every cable was secure. Every bolt was tight. Every electrical connection was proper. Every set piece was stable. There was no further evidence of sabotage. He gave the signal to Mrs. Svoboda. "We are safe to continue," he said. "I am certain of it." Mrs. Svoboda returned to the stage and announced that the performance would resume. The audience erupted in applause. Pavel brought the lights back up, and while the setup was simpler than originally planned, it created a warm glow that filled the stage beautifully. Mrs. Markova called the fifth-grade actors back onto the stage. They took their positions, returning to the exact moment in the scene where they had been interrupted. The audience fell silent, and the scene resumed. Anichka delivered her final line, the one she had been about to say when the light fell. Her voice was strong and clear and filled with emotion. "I love you, Mama and Papa. No matter what happens, we will always be a family." The line, which had seemed sweet but simple in rehearsals, now carried profound weight. After everything that had just happened, after the fear and the danger and the choice to continue, those words about family and love and staying together through hardship resonated through the auditorium like a bell. There was not a dry eye in the house. The scene ended, and the audience erupted in thunderous applause. The fifth-graders left the stage, and the show continued. The sixth-grade choir performed their harmonies beautifully, their voices strong and confident. Then came the final act, the seventh-grade dance number. The oldest children took the stage with fierce determination. They had seen the danger, had waited through the inspection, and now they were going to finish what they started. Their dance was energetic and joyful, a celebration of life and youth and resilience. As they moved through their choreography, Karl stood at his position watching everything. He watched the dancers. He monitored all the technical elements. He kept one eye on the audience and one on the stage. His body was tense and ready to react to any problem. But there were no more problems. The show proceeded flawlessly. When the final dancers struck their last pose and the music ended, the entire auditorium rose to its feet. The applause was deafening, mixed with cheers and whistles. It went on, wave after wave of appreciation and relief and joy. Mrs. Markova brought all the children back onto the stage for a final bow. They stood together, over 100 children of all ages, beaming with pride and accomplishment. Then Mrs. Svoboda did something unprecedented. She walked onto the stage and asked Karl to join her. "Karl, please come out here," she called. Reluctantly, feeling self-conscious, Karl stepped from the saal, wings onto the stage. The audience applause grew even louder. Mrs. Svoboda took his hand and raised it in the air. "This man saved children's lives tonight," she said into the microphone. He then made sure it was safe for the show to continue, and he gave these students the gift of finishing what they worked so hard to create. Karl Novak is a hero in every sense of the word. The audience cheered. Karl saw Eva in the crowd, standing and applauding, tears streaming down her face. He saw parents wiping their eyes. He saw his fellow volunteers grinning and clapping. And he saw Anichka, his beautiful daughter, looking at him with such love and pride that his heart felt like it might burst. This was the moment. This was what it all meant. Not the title or the salary or the recognition, but this. Making a difference, protecting the innocent. Being someone his daughter could look up to, being the man he was always meant to be. The curtain fell one final time, and backstage erupted in celebration. Children hugged each other and their parents. Teachers congratulated the performers. Volunteers celebrated the successful completion, despite everything that had gone wrong. In the midst of the chaos, Anichka ran to Karl and threw her arms around him. "You saved me, Tatinek," she cried. "You saved all of us. I just did my job," Karl said, holding her tight. "No," Mrs. Markova said, approaching them. "You did far more than your job. You showed these children what courage looks like. You showed all of us. Thank you, Karl, for everything." The auditorium slowly emptied as families headed home, but many people stopped to shake Karl's hand or thank him personally. He accepted their gratitude with quiet humility, still processing everything that had happened. The adrenaline that had carried him through the crisis was fading, leaving him exhausted but strangely at peace. Eva approached with her family. She looked at her brother with eyes that held a mix of emotions Karl could not quite read. "That was remarkable," she said softly. "I had no idea you were capable of something like that. The moving so fast, the taking charge, the refusing to give up, where did that come from?" "It was always there," Karl said simply. "I just never had a reason to use it before." Eva shook her head slowly. "I owe you an apology. For years I have looked down on your choices, thought you were wasting your life in this small town doing menial work. I thought I was better than you because I went to university and got a professional career. But tonight I saw something I never saw before. You have qualities that cannot be taught in any school. Leadership, courage, instinct, dedication. You are not less than me. You might actually be more. Carol felt a lump form in his throat. Thank you for saying that. I mean it, Ava said. Her husband Martin stepped forward and shook Carol's hand firmly. You are an impressive man, he said. If you ever consider moving to the city, I have connections with facility management companies that would hire you in a heartbeat. The pay would be excellent. Carol glanced at Anichka, who was talking with her cousins nearby. Thank you, but I think we are happy here. This is our home. These are our people. After Eva's family left, Sergeant Novotny approached with serious news. We found the person responsible for the sabotage, he said quietly. It was Mrs. Linda Horakova's younger brother, Stefan. He has mental health issues and was apparently obsessed with his sister's perceived mistreatment by Mrs. Markova. When Linda quit the costume team, he took it upon himself to seek revenge. He did not understand the potential consequences of his actions. Carol felt a wave of sadness, so it was not malicious intent, but mental illness. That is correct, Sergeant Novotny confirmed. He is being taken for psychiatric evaluation. His family is devastated. Mrs. Horakova had no knowledge of what he planned. She is horrified. Carol thought about Linda Horakova, a kind woman who had worked hard on the costumes until Mrs. Markova's criticism drove her away. She had actually returned to help after the vandalism, working alongside everyone else to repair the damage. Now she would carry the burden of her brother's actions. Please tell her family that I hold no ill will, Carol said. I hope her brother gets the help he needs. Sergeant Novotny nodded with respect. You are a generous man, Mr. Novak. Most people would want punishment. Punishment does not fix broken minds, Carol said. Help does. After the sergeant left, Carol helped the volunteers clean up the auditorium and secure everything for the night. Pavel worked beside him, and they talked quietly about what had happened. You know the story of tonight is going to spread beyond this town, Pavel said. I saw people recording video on their phones. By tomorrow, everyone in the region will know about the janitor who saved the Christmas show. Facilities manager, Carol corrected with a small smile. And I do not care about the story spreading. I only care that the children are safe and they got to finish their performance. Still, Pavel insisted, this changes things for you. You cannot go back to being invisible after this. Maybe I do not want to be invisible anymore, Carol admitted. Maybe these past few weeks have taught me that I have more to offer than I thought. Good, Pavel said. Because my uncle's theater company is seriously interested in meeting you. I called him tonight and told him what happened. He wants to offer you an interview for a technical director position. Carol looked at his young friend in surprise. A technical director position. That is a significant role. You would be qualified, Pavel said. More than qualified. You have the skills, the leadership ability, and tonight you proved you can handle high-pressure situations. The pay would be double what you make here, plus benefits. You could give Anichka a better life. I will think about it, Carol said carefully. But my life here is not bad. In fact, it is pretty good. By 11 o'clock, the auditorium was clean and locked. Carol and Anichka walked home through the quiet streets, holding hands. The night was cold and clear, stars visible in the dark sky above. You were so brave tonight, Tatinek, Anichka said. You ran onto the stage without even thinking. You could have been hurt. I could not let that light hit you, Carol said. A father protects his children. That is what we do. When we got home, Anichka went to bed quickly, exhausted from the emotional intensity of the evening. Karol tucked her in and kissed her forehead. "I love you more than anything in this world," he whispered. "I love you too," she murmured, already half asleep. "You are my hero, Tatinek." Karol sat in the living room for a long time, thinking about everything that had changed. Just 3 weeks ago, he was a janitor, invisible and forgettable, going through the motions of life without passion or purpose. Now he was a facilities manager, recognized and respected, someone who had discovered capabilities he never knew he possessed. The question was what to do next. He could stay at the school with his new position and modest salary increase, comfortable and safe in familiar surroundings. Or he could take a risk, pursue the opportunity Pavel mentioned, move to the city, and work in a real theater, doing what he loved. It was the choice between security and dreams, between comfortable and extraordinary. He thought about Marie and what she would advise. She had always pushed him to believe in himself, to take chances, to not settle for less than he deserved. But she had also valued stability and putting family first. What would she want for him now? The answer came to him with clarity. She would want him to be happy. She would want him to use his gifts. She would want Anichka to see her father as someone who pursued his passions instead of just surviving. But she would also want him to make the choice that honored both his dreams and his responsibilities. The next morning, Karol called Pavel and asked for his uncle's contact information. Then he called the theater company and scheduled an interview for the following week. He was not committing to anything yet, just exploring possibilities. That afternoon, Mrs. Svoboda called him into her office. "The school board met this morning," she said. "They voted unanimously to give you a commendation for heroism and to increase your salary by 20%. They also want to create an endowed fund in your name for arts and technical education. They are calling it the Karol Novak Excellence Fund." Karol was stunned. "That is incredibly generous." "You earned it," Mrs. Svoboda said. "But I need to ask you something. Are you planning to leave us? There have been rumors that you might have other opportunities." Karol was honest. "I am exploring options. I recently discovered that I have skills and interests that might lead me in a different direction, but I have not made any decisions yet." "I understand," Mrs. Svoboda said. "And while I would be sad to lose you, I would also understand. You have outgrown this position, Karol. You are meant for bigger things. Whatever you decide, you will always have a home here if you want it." Over the next week, Karol thought deeply about his future. He talked with Anichka about the possibility of moving to the city. She was scared of leaving her school and friends, but also excited about new opportunities. He talked with Yosef, who encouraged him to follow his dreams while he was still young enough to pursue them. He talked with Elena, who told him she would miss him, but would be proud to see him succeed. He went to the interview at Pavel's uncle's theater company. They offered him the technical director position on the spot, with a salary that was indeed double what he made at the school. The job would involve managing all technical aspects of their productions, supervising a small staff, and occasionally designing lighting for shows. It was exactly the kind of work he had dreamed about as a young man. Karol asked for a week to consider the offer. During that week, he walked through the school hallways, remembering 15 years of work there. He visited the auditorium and stood on the stage where so much had changed for him. He thought about the children he had helped, the community he was part of, the comfortable life he had built. But he also thought about the excitement he felt when solving technical problems, the satisfaction of leading a team, the joy of creating something beautiful on stage. He thought about Anichka watching him pursue his passion instead of just paying bills. He thought about becoming the man he was meant to be, instead of the man circumstances had made him. In the end, the decision was clear. Karol accepted the position at the theatre company. He gave Mrs. Svoboda 2 months' notice so the school would have time to find and train his replacement. He and Anichka would move to the city at the start of the new year. The news spread quickly through the small town. Some people were sad to see him go. Others were happy for his success. The school held a farewell celebration where students and teachers expressed their gratitude for everything he had done. On his last day at the school, Karol walked through the building one final time. He stopped in the auditorium and stood on the stage, remembering that night 3 weeks ago when everything changed. He thought about the scared janitor who became a confident leader. He thought about the invisible man who became a hero. He thought about the father who showed his daughter that it is never too late to pursue your dreams. Eva called that evening to congratulate him on his new position. "I am proud of you," she said. "You took a risk and chose growth over comfort. That takes courage." "Thank you," Karol said. "That means a lot coming from you." "I was wrong about you for so many years," Eva admitted. "I thought success was measured by degrees and titles and money. But real success is about becoming who you are meant to be, about using your gifts, about making a difference in people's lives. You have done all those things." As Karol packed up their apartment, preparing for the move to the city, Anichka came to him with a question. "Tatinek, are you scared about our new life?" "A little bit," Karol admitted. "Change is always scary. But I learned something important these past few weeks. Being scared does not mean we should not do something. It just means we care about doing it well. And we will be together, which means everything will be okay." Anichka hugged him tight. "I am proud of you for being brave." On their last morning in the apartment above the bakery, Karol stood at the window looking down at the street where they had walked together so many times. He thought about Marie and wished she could see how far they had come. He thought about the journey from grief to growth, from surviving to thriving. He thought about the unexpected paths life takes and how sometimes the worst moments lead to the best transformations. The single dad janitor who was asked to guard the stage had indeed ended up saving the show. But more importantly, he had saved himself. He had discovered that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when given the chance. He had learned that it is never too late to become who you were always meant to be. He had proven that heroes do not always wear capes or have special powers. Sometimes they just have gentle hearts, steady hands, and the courage to act when action is needed. As Karol and Anichka drove away from the small town toward their new life in the city, Karol felt no regret. He carried with him the lessons learned, the confidence earned, and the knowledge that he was finally, truly, living instead of just existing. The stage had been his classroom, the performance his test, and courage his diploma. Now he was ready for whatever came next, ready to keep growing, ready to keep becoming. And that was the greatest gift of all.